My favorite quotes from Baird T. Spalding's Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East. 11 men embarked upon a journey in 1894 with one objective: to find the great spiritual teachers of the Far East and witness their uncommon abilities. Volume 1. Death is then an avoidable accident. Disease is, above all, dis-ease, absence of ease or santi, sweet joyous peace of the spirit reflected through the mind in the body. Senile decay, which is the common experience of man, is but an expression that covers his ignorance of cause, certain disease conditions of mind and body. Even accidents are preventable by appropriate mental attitude. Says the Sita, the tone of the body may be so preserved that it may naturally resist with ease infectious and other disease, like plague and influenza. The Sita may swallow germs and never develop disease at all. Remember that youth is God's seed of love planted in the human form divine. Indeed, youth is the divinity within man. Youth is the life spiritual, the life beautiful. It is only life that lives and loves, the one life eternal. Age is unspiritual, mortal, ugly, unreal. Fear thoughts, pain thoughts, and grief thoughts create the ugliness called old age. Joyous thoughts, love thoughts, and ideal thoughts create the beauty called youth. Age is but a shell within which lies the gem of reality, the jewel of youth. Practice acquiring the consciousness of childhood. Visualize the divine child within. Before falling asleep, suggest your consciousness: I now realize that there is within me a spiritual joy body ever young, ever beautiful. I have beautiful spiritual mind, eyes, nose, mouth, skin, the body of the divine infant, which now, tonight, is perfect. Repeat this affirmation and meditate upon it quietly while falling asleep. Upon rising in the morning, suggest to yourself aloud: Well, dear, addressing yourself by name, there is a divine alchemist within. By the spiritual power of these affirmations during the night, a transmutation takes place, and the unfolding from within, the spirit, has saturated this spiritual body and spiritual temple. The inner alchemist has caused dead and worn-out cells to fall and the gold of new skin to appear with perpetual health and loveliness. True divine love in demonstration is eternal youth. The divine alchemist is within my temple, constantly coining new and beautiful baby cells. The spirit of youth is within my temple, this human form divine, and all is well. Om Santi, Santi, Santi. And that means peace, peace, peace. Learn to smile in the sweet way of a child. A smile from the soul is spiritual relaxation. A real smile is a thing of true beauty. The artistic work of the inner ruler, immortal. It is well to affirm: I think a kind thought for all the world. May all the world be happy and blessed. Affirm before taking up the work for the day: Within me there is a perfect form, the form divine. I am now all that I desire to be. I visualize daily my beautiful being until I breathe it into expression. I am a divine child. All my needs are being now and forever supplied. Learn to thrill yourself. Affirm: Infinite love fills my mind and thrills my body with its perfect life. Make everything bright and beautiful about you. Cultivate a spirit of humor. Enjoy the sunshine. You understand that I am quoting from the teaching of Sita. They are the oldest teachers known, and their teaching antedates all history by thousands of years. They went about teaching the people and showing them the better way of life. even before man knew the simple arts of civilization. It is from their teaching that the system of rulers sprang, but these rulers soon wandered away from the realization that it was God expressing through them. Thinking it was themselves, the personal, who were doing the work, they lost sight of the spiritual and brought forth the personal or material, forgetting that all comes from the one source, God. These rulers' personal concepts gave rise to the great separations in belief and the wide diversity of thought. This is our concept of the Tower of Babel. The Sita have preserved throughout the ages the true inspirational methods of God expressing through mankind and through all his creations, realizing that God is all, and that it is God manifesting through all. They have never deviated from this teaching, thus they have preserved the great fundamental truth. After witnessing a miracle of men walking on water, this question was asked: how is it, if a few are able to do the things we have seen accomplished, that all men cannot accomplish the same things? How is it that man is content to crawl, and not only content to crawl, but is obliged to do so? If man was given dominion over all things, he was certainly given power to fly above the birds. If this is his dominion, why has he not asserted this dominion long ago? The fault must certainly be in man's own mind. This must all have come about by man's own mortal concept of himself. He has only been able, in his own mind, to see himself crawling. Thus he has only been able to crawl. Then Jast, one of the immortal mystics, took up the thought and said, "You are perfectly right. It is all in man's consciousness. He is limited or unlimited, bound or free, just as he thinks. Do you think the men you saw walk across the stream yesterday to save themselves the inconvenience of this trip are in any way special creations any more than you are? No, they are not created in any way different from you. They do not have one atom more power than you were created with. They have, by the right use of their thought forces, developed their God-given power. The things you have seen are accomplished in accord with definite law, and every human being can use the law if he will." They were in a place where thousands of people were getting healings. A great many told us they were healed by declaring silently that they desired to be made whole. Another may teach or tell you, but you of yourselves must do the work. For if you look to another, you build the idol instead of bringing forth the ideal. Another one of the mystics, Emil, talked to us on the realization of the Christ consciousness. He said, "It is through the power of our own mind or thought action that we are able to bring forth or realize the Christ consciousness. Through the power or process of thought, we can transmute and evolve our bodies, or our outer conditions and surroundings, through recognition of this Christ consciousness within ourselves, so that we will never experience death, nor any change called death. This is done wholly through man's power to visualize, idealize, conceive, and bring forth that which he gazes upon. This is done by first knowing or perceiving or having faith that the Christ is within ourselves, seeing the true meaning of Jesus' teaching, holding our body one with God, made in the image of likeness of God, and merging that body into the perfect God body, just as God sees us. We have idealized, conceived, and brought forth into manifestation the perfect God body. We are born again truly of and in the spirit kingdom of God. It is in this way that we can return all things to the universal mind substance from which they sprang, and bring them back or return them perfect into outer form or manifestation. Then by holding them in their pure spiritual perfect state, the vibrations are lowered, and the things we wish to create come forth in perfect form. In this way we can take every false belief, every old condition, every sin, all of our past life. It does not matter what it has been, how good or seeming bad, it does not matter what mountain or false belief or doubt and unbelief or fear we or anyone else have erected about us or in our paths. And we can say to them all, I now return you to the great ocean of universal mind substance, from which all things come forth and where all is perfection, and from which you sprang, there to be again resolved into the element from which you were created. I now return you or bring you back from that pure substance as perfect and pure as God sees you, and hold you always in that absolute perfection. We can say to ourselves, I now realize in the old order of things that I brought you forth imperfectly and you manifest imperfectly. Realizing the truth, I now bring you forth perfect as God sees you. You are reborn perfect, and it is so. We must realize that the inner alchemist, God within, has taken hold of this and has transmuted, refined, and perfected that which seemed imperfect, that which we brought forth and are now returning. We should realize that it is refined, perfected, and transmuted, just as our own bodies are refined, perfected, and returned to us as God's body, joyously perfect, beautifully free. Finally, we should realize that this is the perfect Christ consciousness in all and for all. This is hid with Christ in God. Volume 2. That which I desire is already in visible form. I form in mind only that which I desire. As a seed begins its growth underground, in the quiet and in the dark, so does my desire now take form in the silent, invisible realm of my soul. I enter my closet and shut the door. Quietly and confidently, I now hold my desire in mind as already fulfilled. Father, I now await the perfect outpicturing of my desire. Father, Father, within me, I thank you that now in the invisible, the fulfillment of my desire is always established, and I know that you have poured out lovingly and lavishly to all an abundance of your treasure, that you have filled every good desire of my life, that I may partake of your opulent supply, that I may realize my oneness with you, that all of your children may realize the same, and that whatever I have, I may pour out to help all your children. All that I have, I give to you, Father. With all my strength, no act or thought of mine shall deny that I have already received in spirit the fulfillment of my desire, and it is now brought forth into perfect visibility. In spirit, in soul, in mind, in body, I am true to my desire. I have perceived my good in spirit. I have conceived it as a perfect idea in soul, and I have given true thought form to my desire. I now bring into visibility, or true manifestation, my perfect desire. I thank you, Father, that I now have that love, wisdom, and understanding, life, health, strength, and eternal youth, harmony, happiness, and abundant prosperity, and the method of bringing forth from the universal substance that which will satisfy every good desire. Volume 3. The Light. As I stand alone in your great silence, God my Father, in the midst of me, there blazes a pure light, and it fills every atom of my whole being with its great radiance. Life, love, strength, purity, beauty, perfection stand forth in all dominion within me. As I gaze into the very heart of this light, I see another light, liquid, soft, golden white, and radiantly luminous, absorbing, mothering, and giving forth the caressing fire of the greater light. Now I know that I am God, and one with God's whole universe. I whisper to God, my Father, and I am undisturbed. Still in the silence. Yet in this complete silence there exists God's greatest activity. Again I am undisturbed, and complete silence is all about me. Now the radiance of this light spreads to God's vast universe, and everywhere I know there is God's conscious life. Again I say fearlessly, I am God. I am silent and unafraid. I lift the Christ high within me and sing God's praise. In the tones of my music inspiration hums. Louder and louder within me the Great Mother sings of new life. Louder and clearer with each new day inspiration is lifting my conscious thought until it is attuned to God's rhythm. Again, I lift my conscious thought until it is attuned to God's rhythm. Again I lift the Christ high and give close ear that I may hear the glad music. My keynote is harmony, and the theme of my song is God, and God seals my song as truth. Behold, I am born anew, a Christ is here. I am free with the great light of your Spirit, God my Father. Your seal is placed upon my forehead, I accept. I hold your light high, God my Father, again I accept. Stop for a moment and just think of the allness of God or primal cause, with no beginning or end, with universal scope, and surround yourself in this. As you become faithful and worship this and this alone, one God, one almighty presence, you will find that the vibrations of your body will change from the human to the God or primal vibration. As you think, live, move, and become one with this vibration, you do worship, and what you worship, you idolize, you become. It is thus with and for all humanity. There is but one God, one Christ, one union, one man, one general household, all brothers and sisters, all one. God cannot be brought forth as a person or a personal image, but as an all-inclusive universality, interpenetrating all things. The moment you personalize, you idolize. Then you have the empty idol. You have lost the ideal. The ideal is not a dead Savior or a dead God. To make God alive and vital to you, you must think and know that you are God. This is more living and vital to you than anything. This is the divine science of your being. Then you, the Christ, your Redeemer, becomes alive and one with you. You are that very thing. This becomes the motivating force of your whole life. You are redeeming yourself, the true you. You are one with God, truly God. By reverencing, love, and worshiping this, it becomes ideal to you, God right within and active. Out of the blackness of disorder and its outpouring of human misery, there must arise the order which is peace. When man learns that he is one with a thought which is of itself all beauty, all power, and all repose, he will know that his brother cannot rob him of his heart's desire. He will stand in the light and draw unto himself his own. Let pass through your mind, my son, only the image you desire, which is truth. Meditate only upon the true desire of your heart, knowing that it does not wrong any man and is most noble. Now it takes earthly form and is yours. This is the law through which you bring forth your heart's desire. Let him who puts forth his hand to draw the lightning to his brother recall that through his own soul and body will pass the bolt. It is our vision that this present holds all the future. Nothing save the accomplishment of the present give form to the future. Thus humanity has but one road. If the present be made perfect, the future must be perfect. It is not the present perfection delayed to some future perfection. It is the conscious present perfection that brings forth the consciousness of the perfect future. Wherever we go, we find a people that had at one time lived wholly in the present. The whole future was in complete accord with the attainments of the present, so the future could take no other direction. Thus the injunction, take no heed for the future. All their precepts were, live true in the present, and the future must be what the present has been. If you are shooting at a target, and you wish to hit the mark, you must focus your whole thought upon the center of the target. Then, with your will in complete focus, you must see nothing but the mark. When you have hit the mark, you have brought forth or accomplished God in a degree. God is your divine ideal, the focal point upon which every thought and act is centered. It is in this way that you bring forth the divine spiritual man, the Christ of God, the Word made flesh. The flesh is God as well as God is around the flesh. Make your subjective one objective, a willing and all-wise worker with God principle. Head straight for your objective. Make that objective the divine spiritual life that God within you is, and God sees for all. No one ever accomplished anything unless, with all his will in complete focus, he held his objective, God, directly before the pure mirror of his thought force. That thought force is himself acting as God, demanding of himself that his attention be so thoroughly focused upon his objective God that it, God, is brought forth instantly. The instant God is objectified, present the mold or pattern you desire, and it is filled full. If this were not an absolute fact, you would not or could not have thought of your desire. When your desire is set forth in this way, it is divine. With your divinity always projected, your desire is conceived in divine order. It is wholly within your power to say when it shall come forth. You are always in command. You have all power to speak the word of authority. To all outer things your command is complete silence. Now you can say definitely and knowingly, there is no greater power than the Christ within me. I now send forth my Christ-endowed word. It does accomplish all things instantly. There is no greater driving forth than my Christ-endowed word. I praise, bless, and send it forth with abundance, harmony, and perfection. You have first spoken the word, God, which represents your true desire. Never go back again to the asking. This attitude engenders doubt. But go on, recall what you have done. You have put forth your Christ word. You are in command. The thing is finished and complete. It is in divine order. I thank you, God, for life and light, abundant, full and free, for perfect, boundless wealth and power, unhampered liberty. The first step is fully and completely to control all outer activities of thought, mind, and body, with the thought always uppermost that you are cultivating the habit of perfection, the God habit, the Christ of God habit. Do this wherever you are, every time it comes to you during your working or resting hours. See this perfect presence within you. Get into the habit of seeing this perfect presence as your real self, this Christ of God presence. Then go a little further. See a divine white light dazzling in purity and brilliance, emanating forth from the very center of your being. See it shining with such brilliance and glory that it emanates from every cell, fiber, tissue, muscle, and organ of your whole body. Now see the true Christ of God standing forth triumphant, pure, perfect, and eternal. Not the Christ of me, but your own true Christ of God, the only begotten of your Father God, the only true Son of God, the triumphant and all-conquering Godhead. Step forth and claim this as your divine right, and it is yours. Every time you say God, know fully that you are presenting God, and will do the world a greater service by so doing than by presenting me as the Christ of God. It is far greater and nobler to see yourself as the Christ of God, you yourself presenting God to the world and beholding God as yourself. You sit back and pray to me to intercede for you. It is wonderful that you do present me to the world as the Christ of God and recognize the God qualities presented through me, just so long as you do not make an idol or image of me and then pray to that idol. The moment you make a graven image of me and pray to that image, you debauch me and yourselves. It is well to see the ideal that I or anyone else presents, then make that ideal your very own. Then we are not apart or separate from God. As such, man conquers the world. Do you not see the greater thing to be accomplished by standing forth one with us in God? If you cultivate this with love, reverence, devotion, and worship, it becomes a habit, and soon it is all of you, your daily life and existence. In a short time you have brought forth divinity. You are once more the divine Christ, the firstborn of God. You are one with primal spirit, energy. Actually feel, see, and take hold of this great light. Accept, declare, and know positively that it is yours. And in a short time, your body will actually send forth this light. In every age and every condition, all through the great immensity, this supreme light has existed. It is everywhere. This light is life. When anything is made plain, we are enlightened regarding it. The light shines forth into our conscious concept. Soon the light of life will shine forth to your watching eye, as it has to all great ones. Many of these great ones are portrayed standing forth in a great blaze of light. Although you may not see it, this light is real and is life radiating from your body. In first taking up this work and perceiving the truths or the fundamental scientific facts underlying all life and the way of attaining thereto, you take the first step, and the exhilaration and enlightenment are so far beyond anything you've hitherto experienced that you decide to go on in the work. Then doubts, fears, and discouragement are allowed to creep in, and your ongoing seems to be retarded. You struggle first one way, then another, and you seem to be losing ground. The struggle seems to be too great for human beings to accomplish, and you begin to look at the failures all about you. You say God's children are dying on every hand, and none within your generation has accomplished the ideal of everlasting and eternal life, peace, harmony, and perfection which I idealize. You say that accomplishment must come after death, so you let go and find for a time that it is much easier to drift on and on with the human tide on the downward trend. Again, the race consciousness has had another setback. Another who had a great spiritual enlightenment and understanding and could have succeeded has failed, and the race consciousness has another binding hold upon humanity. Generation after generation gives it a still greater and tenacious grip. It is any wonder that human nature becomes weak and frail, and each in turn follows on in the same eternal treadmill, the blind following the blind, on and on into the eternal oblivion, and into the great vortex, where not only the body is forced into dissolution and decay, but the soul is ground between the never-relenting millstones of human perception and mistakes. If you would realize, as I did, and as so many have done, that it is far easier to work out your own problem in one earthly experience than it is to go on and accumulate a race consciousness of good and evil that soon becomes an encrusted shell, that has been added to layer by layer upon an encrustation by each succeeding experience, until it takes superhuman force and sledgehammer blows to break the shell and release your true self. Until you do break the shell and release your true self, you will continue to be ground in the same vortex. You can work until you have released yourself sufficiently to get a glimpse of the horizon's grander view. Here again you cease to struggle, your mental vision is cleared, but your body is still encased in the shell. Realize that the newborn chick, when its head is free from its shell, must still go on with the struggle. It must be entirely free from its old shell or environment before it can grow into the new, which it has sensed and perceived, as soon as it has broken a hole through the shell once encasing the egg from which it grew. Volume 4. The spoken word has a great power, but there's one thing certain. We must select the words, and then we must give them power. There is no power in a negative word unless we do select and give the word power. It does not of itself contain power. Power must be given to the word by the one who speaks it. Of course, as the Eastern philosophy goes, the thought which precedes the word is more important. Consequently, the thought can be the motivating force behind the spoken word, and in that way it adds power. And as the masters put it, the word must go forth and create. Now, if a word is spoken idly, or without force of thought, it does not accomplish. By the selection of that word, the power given to it through thought cannot help but accomplish that very thing for which it is sent. That is why they claim such selectivity for the spoken word, and that is why they say the spoken word is always selective. That power which we put back of the word to accomplish must be the energy that we ourselves perceive. As they put it, not the energy which you give to the word, but the energy that you perceive for the accomplishment of that word is what matters. Jesus said, "My words are spirit, and they are life, and they do accomplish that whereunto they are sent." Spirit is the creative cause in the universe, and our words are potent only as this same spirit is seen as the operative force back of them. It is the activity of the force of nature that makes the seed grow, for no seed has power within itself. It is a container or vehicle of that force. So it is with words. The scriptures say, "The word is a seed," and the power of spirit acts upon words as nature does upon the seed. Our consciousness or awareness of spirit is the focal point in this matter of the power of the word. Idle words are impotent and do not create, though they, in a sense, may add to the state of hypnosis. To fear negative words is to add to their hypnotic energies, and thereby adds to the influence of the negative word. The power of ignorant or idle words is only that they may intensify the hypnotic state of man's mind, but they do not alter the creative cause in the past. The power of negative words is only the modernization of the old idea of the devil, and is the direct violation of the fact that there is only the power of God. There is no power opposed to the ultimate good in the universal trend. That which seems to be opposition is in our own minds, which often work contrary to the divine purpose. We have seen them used in this sense always refers to the masters, put forth a word, and what the word represented would come into existence immediately. There is no time element at all. In fact, there is no way of placing a time element upon the spoken word if the energy spirit is in it. As they put it, a word spoken directly with the impetus of true thought behind it must create that very condition instantly. It is quite evident that the Western world looks upon a word as less potent. That is, a word may be spoken, but with no energy behind it. It loses its potency entirely. It is often said that this is why the Western world gets into such a childish prattle. It fails to put the proper value upon its words. Now the thought which possesses the proper selectivity, or which possesses the force that belongs to it, should always be given to the word, not to derive that word through will or force of the will, but to give the word the power which belongs to it. That, of course, is the power of the spirit, and this is included in our words only through highly selective thought which corresponds to the creative purpose of the universe. In that way the will, which has directive ability, sends a word forth, but it is not the will that gives power to the spoken word. The will selects or enters into the selection of thought and the speaking of the word, but the power is conceded or admitted through an enlarged consciousness of the presence and power of spirit. But when a word is selected for its meaning and its use, it is always selected in the frequency where it belongs and is placed there. This should eliminate the fear which many have of negative words, and at the same time should inspire the individual to a more intelligent selection of his words and how to put them to better use. To think the thoughts of God after him would be the essence of spiritual power, for back of such words would be the very power that created the heavens and the earth. Man's words should always be an outlet for his own innate spiritual nature and a means of establishing this spiritual nature in his outer being. To speak only in harmony with the highest and most constructive ideals would be to speak with the greatest power, and in this way, that which seems the greatest improbability would become the most probable, and that such words have the greater power. In other words, the more godlike the thought, the realization, and the consciousness, the greater the power involved in the process. As the Eastern philosophers express it, you could not be separated from principle one iota, and if you would use selective words, therefore every word that is put out can be selective, then you are not energizing a negative condition. You are only given energy to the one conclusion. The Hindu or the Aryan always puts it, man is the creator of words. Therefore man is the selector, or he has dominion over those words, and he selects or places words in existence which must operate or become potent. Now in the measure that he uses this fact rightly, there is no way of connecting that power with negative words, as they put it. Consequently, negative words do not enter into or have any consideration from the individual who wishes to manifest forms. This thought of manifest form is always that condition brought into existence wherein man is able to create. That is where man has dominion over every word spoken. The Sanskrit language, in one of its phases, allows for that condition. There is in that the power to manifest. By that, we mean that one position of the Sanskrit language allows only 4 positive words or statements. That is, words that can be made into positive statements, and from these there is no deviation. Naturally, everyone asks what these 4 positive words are. They are always words which mean the positive declaration of facts. Each one can select them. Of course, the most positive word is the first word, God. Going back to the principle, you would formulate your statement with that as a basis. You would formulate with that word whatever positive sentence you wished. Thereby is the power of the spoken word. Your key word is always the highest, or God. Then you select the words which accompany that for your positive declaration. Just as all mathematical calculation springs from the unit symbolized by the figure 1, so must all words emulate from a single derivative or principle. God is, and because God is, I am. Because God is life, I am life. Because God is intelligence, I am intelligence. Because God is power, I am power. Because God is all substance, I am substance, etc. Father in Sanskrit means first mover, and the first movement of the mind of the individual must always emanate from the one source, and it must be sustained through the consciousness of the individual. To admit anything into the individual consciousness that does not originate in the facts of God is to adulterate the process of life in himself, and to this extent he becomes unaware of the fullness of his divinity. He must give himself to the underlying facts of life in their entirety. He must tarry at Jerusalem. His content with the all, and to the holy or entire Spirit of God, is the motivating energy of his every thought, word, and act. Man cannot express a word or thought outside of his own field of competency with any manifesting power. He cannot go outside of that field because that very word which he expresses creates the field in which he acts. The average person does not really know what a word is. It is merely a vehicle used in the process of mind to convey or extend certain processes of the mind. The word cannot convey that which is not in the mind. Webster says that a name implies the essential nature of a thing. A word is only a name for certain states of consciousness, and that is something that rests with the individual himself. One person may say, "I am happy," and it would convey nothing to another individual hearing the word. If his consciousness is only a bit joyous, his words would convey but little authority. But if he were radiant with joy, his words would convey complete conviction. Idle words are empty words, words which do not contain the consciousness and realization of spiritual facts. You see, a word, as we use it, is just what it contains, and the content of the word is determined by our consciousness, and our consciousness is determined by the degree of intelligent selection which we use. It is not repetition that makes a word effective. Your first declaration, if it be true, is sufficient. There's nothing left to do but stand by your statement, abide in your word. Repetition, however, is often an effective means of bringing one into accord with the possibilities contained within a statement. One often repeats a sentence or rule over and over before the meaning is clearly revealed to his consciousness. Without this expansion of the mind toward the inner facts, repetition is only hypnotic. If man repeats words and they do not become hypnotic to him, this repetition brings him into closer accord with the facts back of the words. It effects a higher realization. It is worthwhile to repeat up to a certain point, and then it is not worthwhile even to repeat because your word is established unto you. When you understand that your word is clearly established, repetition is of no more value whatsoever. In reality, we come to understand that our word is always established and we never repeat it. If the manifestation of your word does not appear, that is no proof of its ineffectiveness. The better policy in such a case is to give thanks that the manifestation is there. You get out of doubt completely in that way. But by going on and repeating your word, you may very well quickly begin to engender doubt. Whereas if you give thanks, you are more closely in harmony with your word and become more easily aware that your word is established. The mere repetition of a word does not establish it any more firmly. It only brings you into harmony with that which is. It is very often possible to bring yourself into more harmonious relationship by giving thanks that it is here now and that it is established. When one realizes that the whole problem of manifest results is more a matter of opening up the consciousness to see or include something which already exists in fact, instead of trying to bring something that is not out into manifest form, then the matter will be much simpler. It is the land thou seest, that will I give unto thee as an inheritance, that contains all the mystery. It is a fact in spirit, it is a fact everywhere, and on all so-called planes, for there is only one plane, and that is spiritual. As the mind expands to see or grasp the spiritual fact, there can be no question whatever about the manifestation of the fact. If it is so in God, it is so everywhere, for God is all. It is all a matter of awareness upon our part, and our awareness must be expanded to include the reality and existence of the spiritual fact. That was Jesus' method of working. Every word was established unto him. He exalted every word through his exalted consciousness, knowing that it was already in existence. The Hindu stands in the same position. He states his declaration, and then he may say that it is finished. He takes the attitude that it is already finished. It is already in existence. It is his, and then he goes on. One accomplishes far more in that way than to go back to the repetition, and it seems to always make one stronger. In the matter of treatment of so-called disease, the average metaphysician makes the mistake of dealing with the opposites, disease and health. Here are two conditions, the one to replace the other. In the East, they do not work in this way any more than did Jesus. When you seek for perfection, know that it is established unto you. Exalt perfection. Perfection exists independent of both the opposites of health and disease. Perfection is an externally established fact and principle, and it is complete within itself on every so-called plane. Both health and disease are delusions according to Eastern philosophy, for they are only human concepts. For instance, your own idea of health today would not suffice you in 5 years from now, for health is a relative idea in your own consciousness. There is nothing relative in being. All is complete, all is perfect, and the true practitioner identifies himself with reality and does not deal with delusion. Let go of the opposites altogether and put in their place the perfection. We find that Jesus did not in any instance treat with the opposites. He put into the place of both the opposites the true perfection. His great statement was perfection always, and that perfection was always established unto him. If I place on the background the figures 2 + 2 = 3, and then follow with 2 + 2 = 5, would you deal with the 3 and 5 and try to establish the right answer? No, you would go right through these figures, deal with the fact that 2 + 2 = 4, and both these extremes would vanish. That which is less or more than the correct answer has nothing to do with the fact and principle, and it is only by bringing the fact of principle to bear upon the situation that any correct answer is possible. Our ideas of health and disease are both less than the perfection which is established in the foundations of the universe, and never can that which is less than perfection be made into perfection. You are dealing with something unrelated to either of these extremes. Be ye perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect, is the correct standard of procedure here. Most people fail in the so-called demonstration because they make a statement of perfection and then immediately begin to look back into the matter of the opposites. Only if thine eye be single shall thy body be filled with light. Lot's wife turned and saw double, and her body became stone or salt. Now henceforth and forever, see only perfection, said Jesus. The moment that we establish perfection, the Christ stands forth dominant. Each works to establish the other, for the fact and spirit is the form of its manifestation. The effect of true spiritual treatment is not dependent upon the degree of unfoldment or spiritual development of the person treated. We need not bother about his consciousness, for it is based upon the opposites, else he would not be ill. The spiritual fact is, and the moment we stand in perfection, our consciousness is perfect as well. Speaking the word is never hypnotic, for it is the essence of the true nature of all creation. Treatment or speaking the word is not projecting our ideas of health to offset disease. This latter is hypnotic. Speaking the word is only telling the truth, declaring that which always has been and always will be true of any individual, condition, or circumstance in principle. Hypnosis is a result of speaking from the human mind with its imperfect concepts. It is not necessary that the sick or needy person ask for your help, nor that he be conscious that you are sending forth the word to him. If you send it forth on the Christ right ray, you are merely presenting his own innate perfection to him. In this way you liberate both yourself and him, for you are not dealing with anything but fact. You are not working against the will of any individual when you work with perfection, for the innate will of everyone is for perfection. This rather frees his will from its entanglements in the realm of false habits and concepts. There is no so-called influence in this sort of facing the situation. It is merely calling forth that which has always existed until it arrests the attention of everyone involved, and they merely see that it is so. There is power in the spoken word always if we see it as spirit, for then it can be nothing but spirit. We are the determinator. We are both the power and the expresser of that power, and we are the sole determinator of what that word shall carry with it. There is power in medicine on exactly the same basis. It is but the conveyor or means by which the mind of the patient is expanded to admit the creative authority of the universe. God is in the doctor, the patient, or the pill. Any individual, regardless of his profession or status, need only project the perfection. Of course, if we always would work in that perfection and manifestation of perfection, we soon would get out of medicine completely. Our word would heal. There is no harm in using an agency in an attempt to minister to the needs of suffering mankind. There are many steps and many methods, but only one power. If our ideal is perfection, we are going to arrive at a point where there are no agencies. The agency which an individual employs only indicates the progress he has made in his own mind as to the suitable and most efficient means of admitting perfection into his being. One thinks it must come through a pill. One thinks it will come through affirmations. But through whatever it comes, it is the perfection of principle that manifests. Only the highest ideals are adequate to contain the full measure of power that exists in divine principle. For the larger the container, the more can be conveyed. When the container and the contained are one, perfection, then it is complete in every plane. In treating at a distance, or what metaphysician calls absent treatment, thought is more rapid and potent than words. Thought does not know time and space, while a word or audible sound belongs on the material plane and must traverse space and endure in time in order to reach its destination. Notice how instantly your thought is at the sun, the center of the earth, or at any other place. Thought does not travel, it is already there. Every fact in spirit is already there, and further, it is already in evidence. To see this fact is to lift yourself into this fact, and to see it for another is to lift him into it. If I be lifted up, if the perceptive faculty is lifted up to the plane of reality, it draws all things into this realm. This is the true approach, rather than to try to lift anything or anybody into the perfect state. We might as well try to make energy out of earth by using the pick and shovel. We know a man in India who walks through a storm just by the presentation of perfection of that storm. He will walk through a storm and never get wet. We have seen him stop fires and storms. Man himself is the word of God if he abides in that word. If ye abide in my word, and my word abides in you, then you are in me even as I am in you, is the truth of the whole thing. When Jesus sent his word and healed the centurion's daughter, he did not send anything as we measure it in the three-dimensional world. Jesus, or Christ, was the Word himself, and there is not anything that was made but that which was made by the same Word. Therefore, the Word which he sent did not traverse space, for the Word was there as the truth of the centurion's daughter, just as it was with him. He simply announced a universally true spiritual fact, and outer minds became awakened to this fact. Our remedies oft in ourselves do lie, which we ascribe to heaven. Shakespeare. Consciousness is man's state of awareness. It is the capacity of the mind to know, and its knowing determines his capacities along all lines. Man may be aware of that which is true, or he may develop in his mind a sense of awareness that has the semblance of reality, but which is entirely false. The truth or falsity of his estate is, therefore, dependent upon his state of awareness or his consciousness. Consciousness must be that which represents the highest attributes. It must be related to all high attributes. We carry our consciousness to God consciousness wherein we are aware of all things including ourselves to the highest state. That is the state whereas we see through all conditions and all circumstances. As the Masters say, the veil is then completely removed, the veil that hitherto seemed to exist between the mortal or physical and spirit. There is no limitation here. The mortal and physical conceptions are abandoned completely for the true spiritual. This spiritual consciousness does not exclude sense activity. True sense activity is included in the highest consciousness always. Sense activity in its rightful function is true spiritual activity. The senses, so-called, act in a limited manner only when not under the right determining influence. When activated by the spiritual facts, the senses function properly and are then said to be opened. The question is often asked, in what state of consciousness is the individual when in trance? Trance is only a partial expression of sense activity. We might just as well carry our consciousness to the true activity or completion always, and when this partial expression becomes one with true activity, we are never in trance and we are never under any destructive hypnotic condition. This same fact applies to what we commonly classify as subdivisions of consciousness. One should not attempt to classify consciousness, for it cannot be subdivided. It is one consciousness, and in that state we cannot think in terms of divisions or separations. The subdivisions are illusions, the same as illusionary trance. They are so subtle that they can be very deceptive to one who is not using higher discrimination. It is so much easier to see it all as one. The subdivisions originated with man. Man saw the subdivisions as attributes when they are really not such at all. The thought of most teachers is possibly for clarity in conveying the message, but it is better for them always to make it one thing. Simplicity in the end is always the greatest clarity. The trouble with subdivisions is that they are almost always considered as attributes. It is better to keep your eye fixed on one. We get into negative conditions through using subdivisions. They are nearly always symbolic, and most of our symbols represent subdivisions of consciousness. That is another reason why symbols no longer suffice. It is well known today that we have worked through symbolism. As the Masters say, we are in the pure light of day and consciousness. It becomes far simpler to have that consciousness, that complete light, as our aim without any subdivisions whatsoever. Take the matter of eating, digesting, assimilating, and the rebuilding of the body through the conversion of food into energy, muscle, bone, blood, teeth, hair, etc. Imagine that you worked out a theory that each one of these is a separate function to be dealt with individually, and that you had to determine with each meal just what portion of your food would be handled through each one of these particular functions, and just when each would function in turn. How could you escape confusion? The fact is, you recognize it is as one process with many phases, and each one of these phases is a self-operative process within a single system. In a normal physical state, there is not a single phase of the entire system that functions independently, but every one of the various phases is but the working out of the single system. The body is only a symbol of the soul or the man who lives within the body. That is, the body is a symbol of the workings of consciousness. To protect and determine that which enters into consciousness, which is through the control of one's attention, the entire system of consciousness is self-operative as a single system. There is not conscious, subconscious, superconscious, but just one radiant living consciousness of reality. This is the state of complete freedom from symbols and therefore from hypnosis. Some people become so interested in the psychic sense or the lower phases of consciousness that a complete earth life is given over to it to the extent that the true consciousness cannot manifest. The best solution is to simply let go of it and become one with the whole. This is what Paul inferred when he said, "Reckon ye yourself to be dead unto sin, but alive unto God." The difference is in clear knowing and influenced knowing. Clear vision is what clairvoyance intends to convey, but the commonly accepted meaning of clairvoyance is partial or clouded viewing, seeing only in part. There can be certain relative phenomena brought into existence through clairvoyance and clairaudience, as practiced, or any of the 5 divisions of consciousness, but they can never be or lead to the whole. You see, they may become false, and under a manifestation of these conditions we may get a false concept completely, which I usually refer to as a negative concept. When we stand one with the whole, we cannot be either negative or false. It should be clear knowing of truth itself. We cannot reach the state of knowing or that one consciousness through mediumship or any form of hypnosis. All are distinctly detrimental to the spiritual unfoldment. In that high sense, all senses become one. They all become one in perfect coordination. Our senses coordinate absolutely, and every part and cell of our bodies coordinate and vibrate in unison. One great trouble with these other conditions is that we are likely to have one member of the body vibrating in the wrong field, and then the new cells do not match themselves properly to the organ to which they belong. Each cell that is created represents the organ to which it will attach itself. If one cell gets out of the vibratory field in which it belongs, it may attach itself to the wrong organ, and then you can have a discordant condition. This discord is often extremely intensified by the various occult methods of concentration upon the physical centers or organs. This practice only superimposes a hypnotic state more definitely into the manifest form, and greater confusion results. In the first place, hypnosis is only a function of a partial consciousness or specialized consciousness in some particular form of direction. Therefore, the more diversified the field and departmental the consciousness, the more hypnotic it becomes. And to willfully work in subdivisions and phases of consciousness would be the most definitely hypnotic in influence. The attention should always be directed into the whole, into complete oneness, and then the distribution of vibratory energy is carried on through the mechanism of consciousness just as it is in the body. Then there is perfect synchronization or harmony throughout the entire organism. The idea of an inner and outer consciousness is also a phase of hypnosis, for the theory imposes a sense of separation or division. There is in reality not an inner and an outer consciousness, nor personal consciousness and a universal one. When the self becomes conscious in the outer, it is only one attitude of consciousness, and it is complete in every way, and it is one in and with universal consciousness. I and my Father are one. We are then not conscious of an inner, for the inner and outer are one. The whole is always evident. If we see and project our vision or our ideal, it is for the complete wholeness. The masters call that being of sound mind, or completely sound in consciousness. It is perfectly sound and whole. The body is perfectly sound and perfectly whole as well. The knower and the thing known become one. Paul included that in his teachings, but it was never included in the translations. We can become the known as well as the knower if we will complete the two and bring them together. The trouble is that we make a separation when in reality none exists. The practice of denial as an effective means of liberation into this perfect state should also be intelligibly considered in this light. Denial is supposed to erase from the mind or blot out of consciousness, hence out of man's being, an experience or process that is not true or that is seemingly opposed to be as perfect state of completion or oneness. But is the ordinary use of denial as practice in our metaphysics an efficient means in bringing about this liberation? If the denial, as it is commonly used, produces the desired result, then well and good, but if not, let us find out what is back of it and what is the efficient practice involved. Let us take a specific case of denial in its relationship to what is commonly considered the law of heredity. Denial is in no sense necessary. It has a tendency always to plunge one further into illusion, because the denial keeps the mind fixed upon the condition, and it is thereby more likely to intensify that condition. The mind naturally enlarges upon that condition towards which it is directed. The purpose is that the condition be eliminated entirely, and in order for this to be brought about, it must be put out of consideration altogether. It is not to be countenanced. In reality, there is no law of heredity. It is only a manifestation. It is not necessary to deny something that does not exist. You will find it far better to put perfection in the place of denial. You will get quicker results. Usually a denial holds it closer to the individual, whereas by putting perfection in the place of the denial, you realize that condition far more quickly. And it does not matter what the condition is. It has been shown by repeated experiments that it is far better to simply release the condition, free it entirely through non-attention, dismiss it. That was evidently Jesus' meaning when he said, "Loose him and let him go." There is neither race nor family heredity, for the one presupposes the other. People may look alike, but this is always because of some former close relationship or similarity of past experience and environment. There is an apparent chromosomatic condition that shows process of evolution running parallel, but these processes are not in reality parallel processes or parallel evolutionary conditions. They do, of course, run parallel with the human race as well as with the animal kingdom, but not with the same frequency by any means. It is a well-known fact today that every frequency of the human body is above that of the animal frequency. The transmission of the acquired characteristics can be influenced through the thought, but it can also be set aside through reversal of thought. It is a state of mind that causes the characteristics of form, and similarity in form is due to the similarity of mental and emotional experiences of individuals in a group. Two people, not much alike in the beginning, through long association with each other and enduring the same general mental and emotional reactions, ultimately develop similar characteristics. A man and a woman living together over a period of years, if they have sympathetic interests and mutual emotional reactions, begin to look alike. This is a reproduction of similar mental states. Medical science today is quite reversing its former opinions regarding hereditary diseases. When Jesus healed the epileptic, the disciples wanted to know whether the man or his parents had sinned. This was his direct answer: neither this man nor his parents have sinned unless you see the sin. It was only sin because of the thought of the parents or those surrounding him. In reality, the only sin connected with the condition was the sin of erroneous thinking. The so-called law of karma comes under the same category. It can be proved today that there is no debt of karma, that the soul does not bring any of this through. Spiritual understanding takes no account of karmic conditions or any imperfect condition. It is as foolish as to say that one must correct his mistakes in mathematics before he can study the rule. The fact is that the mistake is erased of itself when one applies himself to the rule. One's access to the rule is always direct, no matter what his mistakes are, and once the rule is known and followed, there are no false results. The leading and better universities in India, and particularly Dr. Bose of Calcutta University, are making the statement today that there would be no appearance of what we call heredity if people would drop it out of their thought completely. Even with the plant, heredity may be shown, but it can be corrected by the thought of the people surrounding that plant. That which is commonly accepted as inherited insanity is only a condition fastened upon the victim by other people. They are in parallel groups. It is an attraction and not an inheritance. Instead of accepting this theory of heredity, Paul's idea that we have an inheritance from God that is immutable and cannot be changed should be substituted. This is the effective denial of race heredity, the substitution of the true for the false, leaving the false entirely outside the range of our consideration. God has nothing to do with things that obsess the human mind, and we as sons of God need not have. All the so-called human laws or mental laws belong in this category. They are all mistakes in that they do not define the true governing law of the universe and the things therein. But they can be set aside at any time. They are denied by merely rejecting them in favor of the true law. Bose had proved that conclusively. He states that all so-called laws of heredity are only manifestations brought about by the thoughts of men and can be set completely aside by any time. First, however, we must become one with the Christ self. It takes a Christ consciousness to set these laws aside, just as it takes true knowledge to set aside false beliefs. This Christ state must first be attained or unfolded, and once in this state, there is, of course, nothing else. Hypnosis may spring from two conditions, a partial state of consciousness or a false state of consciousness. A partial state of consciousness admits of certain capabilities, and one feels limited or unable to go beyond that which his consciousness indicates. All restraint or the sense of inability to accomplish is only a state of partial hypnosis. The false state of consciousness is the notion that certain things are true which are not true at all. This is a state of complete ignorance or reality. It is a mental state built up of impressions that are entirely false. States of consciousness built up regarding something, if it can be so stated, that does not exist at all. Or on the other hand, a set of impressions that are entirely false regarding a thing that in itself is entirely true. This might be illustrated with the notion once held by man that the earth is flat. The hypnotic result was that men were held with certain restricted zones of activity, fearing to go beyond these restricted areas, lest they should fall off the edges of the earth. That idea seems completely silly now that we know the earth is round. It was round all the time, but the people were as limited in their activity as if the earth itself had actually been flat, with a great chasm spreading beyond these edges. Adventurers who had another notion about the earth dared to venture beyond the limitations in which others lived, and they sailed out across the chasm without any difficulty so far as they were concerned. To them the chasm did not exist, nor did it exist in fact. However, the others knew they would fall into it. The manner in which the condition was met was not in overcoming the chasm, for there was no such thing. It was simply a matter of sailing out beyond the limitations of opinions, and it was found that no actual limitations existed at all. This is exactly the manner in which the masters meet every situation. What appears exists not at all, they say. They are not hypnotized by the opinions held by the race nor conditions as they appear to the race, for they know reality. Their determination is in the realm of facts, and they traverse time and space just as Columbus sailed across the edges of the earth. There were no edges to the earth, and there is no time or space to the master. They are all illusions, just as the flat earth with its edges was an illusion. This is what Jesus meant when he said, "Get thee behind me, Satan," as it is translated. In reality, he said, "Get thee behind me, limitation," for there is no such thing. He put it out of the range of his consideration and conduct, for in his illumined state there were no such things. He saw through the hypnotic spell, the veil in the temple, and lived wholly in reality. In sleep, the consciousness becomes completely universal. It becomes knowing, with all attributes alert. That is why we can often do in our sleep that we cannot do when awake. We submerge it because of our outer activities during the day. We go on in great hurry during the day, so that we become completely exhausted when night comes, and our consciousness immediately floods back to the all-knowing condition, though we do not know it. We are not conscious of what is taking place. We should be just as conscious as in our so-called waking condition. Sleep allows that complete consciousness to come into function. That is why psychoanalysis lays such stress on the dream state as being superior to the waking state. But the two, the sleeping and waking states, should be exactly the same. If we would turn our thoughts to this higher consciousness, we would be in the realm always. The dream is a more of a clairvoyant state of a very low order, unless we do turn our minds to a higher condition or knowing state. If we do this, our dreams are true always and are not something that has not actually happened to us at all. Dreams ordinarily are a mixture of the earthly and the higher experiences. If our thoughts were always of that higher condition, our dreams would correspond. Our days would be concluded the moment we went to sleep. Sometimes when a man is up against a stone wall, so to speak, due to serious problems which he cannot seem to solve. His state of exhaustion appears to quiet the outer, and very often the solution comes through. He has merely carried on the false practices of living until he has contracted his being as far as he can. It is just the same as if he had gone to sleep. The cessation of activity through exhaustion causes his mind to let go of the condition, and then the solution came through. The method of relaxation which the masters use is to let go completely of any outer condition and always project their thoughts to a perfect activity. The physical, emotional, and mental must be stilled by directing the attention higher. The difference between the ordinary dream and a nightmare is that in a nightmare, you have the psychic phenomena in evidence, becoming connected with an outer activity, and always thus permitting anything to come in, the same as in psychism or mesmeric influence. I have seen people hypnotized, and they were not themselves at all. They would act like monkeys or go about barking like dogs. This is quite similar to the nightmare. When you are in the nightmare, it is possible to come out of it if you will think of what you would think if you were in the waking stage. A patient has been known to cure himself entirely of extreme cases of nightmare by just thinking. By thinking while experiencing the nightmare, just what would I do if I were in the waking state? He would have accomplished the same result more quickly had he thought what would he do were he in the perfect state of spiritual consciousness, and would have raised himself nearer to that state. If he would ask himself what he would accomplish if he could see directly through the spiritual, it would become much simpler and more beneficial because it would be permanent. The breaking up of a nightmare becomes automatic if just before you go to sleep, you declare that you are one with perfection. It has no chance to enter when you are in this state. This same practice can be applied equally to the so-called waking state. All negative conditions and difficult problems can be corrected and solved every time by this method. You will find it very practical to ask yourself, when faced with problems or apparent negative conditions, what you would do if you were in spiritual consciousness. Get rid of the complexities of earthly living in this way. It is really just as simple as that. To be still and know that I am God conveys the case perfectly, for that is the completion of it all. And that other phrase, God is in his holy temple, let all earth keep silent before God and rejoice, is equally applicable. And again, in everlasting joy all things have their birth. It is the exaltation of soul as physical pleasure is the exaltation of the body. But it is the true emotional state of man, born from his inner release into the truth of his being. It is only when we get out of that condition of joy and harmony that we begin to feel separated from the highest. You are going to hear a great deal of that talk in the coming years in all theological schools. It is quite remarkable how that is now being brought about, and how this change is manifesting even in the teaching of children to become harmonious, and let the turmoil around them go on as it pleases without becoming a part of it. The moment you train children to react to constructive ideals and band together to promote harmony, developing the mass instinct in this way, you are destroying the very root of all unhappiness, misery, want, and war in the world. Our past method has been to develop the sense of strife. The moment that someone acted in a manner that aroused any resentment or resistance, everyone else began to take on the same attitude, and in this way we have been trained to develop the sense of strife. Only by reversing the process and getting back to the true state will we find our perfect social structure coming into the world. People generally are interested in the Master's idea of God and the location of God. We shall therefore consider this idea in the present chapter. However, it will be impossible to consider their ideal without including man, for to them God and man are inseparable. The Masters talk of God considerably, but they consider it as one attribute of being. Being as one attribute or a single entity comprising the entire universal system, visible and invisible. The mind of man got its idea of God through superstition about God. Men saw then nothing but the graven image. It was then necessary to bring him back to the realization that he is God, there being no separation between the individual and the universal. The man is an integral part of the whole, and is identical in nature with the whole. They teach that God is right within man always, just as Jesus Christ taught. That is always the attitude and thought of the illumined. Man is God. That statement, I am God, is one of the most definite statements that man can use. We have never known them to give instructions in writing, but they do give oral instructions or oral talks. They do not call their talks instructions. They are simply stating facts which are obvious, and they assume that the obvious should be known universally. Therefore they do not teach, but merely confirm, what all men instinctively know, and which is universally true. As a guide in individual progress, they suggest reading the Mahabharata, the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Gita. This reading is suggested in preparation for one whose desire is to take the real inner work and for concentration. A few verses at a time are best. They never suggest reading the whole book through. They often read but one sentence in a whole day. The instructions given in the Gita are steps towards accomplishment of individual perception of what God really is, and to really bring the individual into the consciousness of what it means. No man will actually know God until he himself experiences the realization of God within himself. No man knoweth the things of God, except the Spirit of God which is in him reveal them. The preparatory work prior to the discovery of the inner or secret doctrine, as it is sometimes called, is the result of training the mind to grasp that which is within the statements, for that is the inner work or inner doctrine. It is like studying to understand the meaning of a mathematical rule. The thought is that, when one has trained himself to gain the knowledge of the inner meaning of the teachings of the Gita or the Bible or any other sacred book, he is then in position to make an inner search of himself to find the inner meaning of his own being. Man is not a physical organism, but that inner self living through a physical organism. The inner work is finding the self, which is the God self. The statement, I am God, accompanied by the realization of what is truly involved in it, will heal any condition instantly. If you realize it and see nothing but the truth, only that truth can manifest. In treating yourself or another, you see and declare only the eternal unity with God. That light comes forth instantly, for it is a true light, and then we know that university is in existence within ourselves and within everybody else. It is all accomplished. That is the Christ light, the Christ principle. This eliminates the theory that it is necessary to do any specific work on the glands, on body centers, upon the body itself, or to treat disease, as you stated. The physical will fall into line as soon as we realize that fundamental unity. When the state is reached, the glands and all bodily functions are stimulated until they become harmonious. Every atom of the body is stimulated and aroused to action in perfect coordination with the spirit. It is the spirit that quickens. You cannot raise the bodily action into accord with spirit by the process of mind, for the spirit is above the mind, as the heavens are high above the earth. Flesh does not need to be spiritualized. It is already spirit in manifestation, just as water is oxygen and hydrogen in manifest form. The water is one in and with its source, and is identical in nature with its source. To separate oxygen and hydrogen from water would be to disintegrate the water itself. Your body is the temple of the living God in exactly the same manner, and when reunited with its source, the body becomes pure and perfect as radiant light, the light that was in the beginning and out to which all things were formed. That which makes the body appear to be something else is the clouded mentality that has imposed itself between the flesh and its true source. The body, temple of the living God, has become a den of thieves, robbing the body of its true sustaining principle. This is difficult for many to understand, for they think of themselves only in terms of their conscious thought. All such thoughts must be discarded. The realization includes the conscious mind, when the Christ mind has become the complete consciousness of the individual. For the conscious mind is then included in complete consciousness. All thoughts that we have embraced within our consciousness that are in variance with the truth must be given up. When any individual attains the true knowledge of God, his works will be completed instantly. If he would stand completely one with God, it would be finished instantly. Jesus said, "It is finished." and from then on went right on to other accomplishments. If we ourselves recognize perfection, we become the perfection itself. We need no other recognition. It is all God, if we wish to put it that way. That was the only thing which the people 2,000 years ago had against Christ. They thought it blasphemy that he should consider himself as God, for their state of hypnosis could not fathom the mystery of his position, which is the true position of all men. But that was the only thing they had against him. When we make that same statement before unillumined people, those steeped in ignorance regarding the true state of all creation, they accuse us of blasphemy today, just as they did Christ 2,000 years ago. But why should we care? So long as we care what people think, just so long will we keep ourselves in subjection to the hypnotic spell on the earth. But one who is awakened never goes about making such outward statements to the profane world. One meaning of I am God is, I am silent. The attempt to make God a trinity came through the idea of differentiation of the one. The reduction of all elements to the one element or emanating energy leads to the three in one or unity, and directly to the true trinity or triad as one attribute of being. This is the Holy Spirit, the whole I, the creative spirit as complete reaction. The moment we project our thought to the Holy Ghost, we are projecting our being to the complete creative spirit in action. It is the movement of the whole as a unit. When the Holy Spirit comes upon you, you are conscious that all action within and without is but the complete action of the principle in its entirety, without the slightest sense of separation or deviation. It is one action. There can be no actual sin against the Holy Ghost. In the original text we find nothing about the expiation of sin. Man alone commits what he himself calls sin, and man alone forgives sin. The Son of Man on earth has power to forgive sin. There could be no sin against the Holy Ghost, for it is impossible for man to divide the indivisible or to actually separate the uni-action of the one. He only seems to do so. That is where the divine rights of kings come from. If the king is in his divine right, he can make no mistake, and man, and as king, could make no mistakes. This did not refer only to a certain king or family ruling over a nation, but to man ruling over himself. When he rules over himself, he becomes a king. Every man is a king when he knows himself as God. When he knows himself as God and exercises his God authority to completely subject every phase of himself to the one idea. The interpretation of God speaking to individuals or group of people as designating only that particular person or group is false. When God speaks to one man or one nation, he speaks to all men and all nations. For he created of one blood all nations of men, and he is no respecter of persons. But from this false interpretation, man has built up separate groups into nations. The Orthodox churches, according to Dr. Lyman Abbott, have done more towards the retrogression of civilizations than any other influence because of their hatreds. The first intention in the presentation of God was that you look immediately to the light which emanates from your own being and from the being of every individual as being one and the same light, and that God equally manifests himself to and through all beings in exactly the same sense, without partiality or distinction. The moment you can project your vision to that light, you are at once conscious completely, namely, in the divine consciousness, and there can be no separation there. With no sense of separation, there can be no separation in creed or race or nation, and hence no strife or war. This is the theory back of our experience in walking through fire. The masters told us afterward that we had raised our vibration to such an extent that there is no conflict between us and the fire. There is perfect harmony and oneness. We clearly saw the fire raging all around us, but we felt no heat or discomfort. Our clothes were not even scorched. The experience had quite recently been duplicated in London by a young Hindu yogi under the severest scientific test conditions. Pictures of this incident were shown in America on one of the newsreels, and Edwin C. Hill, famous news commentator, wrote at some length upon the subject. Copies of this comment were mailed to 100 teachers conducting classes on these lessons. The life of the masters is simply the God life. They always put it, life is light. The moment we express light, life emanates. If you live the life, then you will know, and that knowing is complete. It is not a life of asceticism or apartness. It is a life and light in unity. Anyone can break his seeming bondage to a condition that is not godly by simply letting go of the bondage completely. That was our training from boyhood on. If a discordant condition came into our surroundings, we let go of it completely. The masters sometimes go for hundreds of days without eating. They are not bound in any way. But when they do eat outwardly, they do feed upon the prana, or spiritual substance that is all about them. They take in pranic substance, and it is assimilated for the direct and complete sustenance of the body. Plants feed upon prana, and when man uses the vegetables for food, he takes in prana also. He can take in directly even more readily than the plants and vegetables do, if he will. It would not be part of wisdom for the Western world to discard the Bible in favor of the Bhagavad Gita. Our Bible is of greater importance for the Western world, for we do not understand the Bhagavad Gita. The latter is best, however, for the East. The West could, with profit, read the Bhagavad Gita, as it would obviate the necessity of wading through the folklore and mistranslations of the Bible. The Bhagavad Gita has taken all that out. The Vedanta philosophy, in most instances, is the best exposition of the teachings of the masters. Many people get a more simplified thought and can assimilate these thoughts through the Vedas. Then they can go on to the Vedantic teachings. It is from this point of view, the view that the masters look upon reincarnation. They say it is not necessary. It is a human hypothesis only. They say that if there is a light placed in the center of the room, the best way to reach the light is to go straight to it. Why circle around it time after time? If you go directly to that light and pick it up and incorporate it, you are through with all reincarnation and karma completely. It is only man's failure to go direct to the central point or fact of life that keeps him in the wheel of incessant grind. If he will accept that central fact, which is the light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world, he will have arrived, and all his going around and round will have ceased, it will have come to an end. All of these great problems that afflict the mind of man are completely overcome when he lives the life of the masters, or the life of his own mastery, the true inner self. Jesus' firm statement was that the truth makes you free. Man gets rid of the idea that he is not God by refusing to accept the negative statements. The statement, I am God, held habitually as the secret fact within his own nature, frees him from the negative statement that he is not God. It is always better to state the truth than the untruth. If one is overly cautious and is not fully awake to himself, this may seem like laying hold of your divinity by means of blind faith, but that is not necessary. But if you take it wholly on blind faith, you have made a separation again and would never get to the goal. It is far better to say I can, and then go right on to I am. I can is the potential fact, but I am is its fulfillment in your consciousness. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. You can never be that which you are not, nor can you be anything but what you are. If you can become anything, as you put it, you are that. It is really not a matter of becoming. It is a matter of being. Because you accept the I can't attitude in any condition or circumstance, you have accepted a division. Jesus said you could not compromise with sin. You cannot deviate from the fact and express that fact. When Jesus considered the suggestion that he turn the stones into bread, he realized that the stones were already in existence and in manifestation, and he did not need to change the stones into bread, as he could stretch forth his hand and the bread was there. What ought to be is the teaching of the masters. If he needed bread, he did not need to concern himself with the stones. He knew that if there was a need for bread, it was already in existence, and all he needed to do was to give thanks for it. It would be impossible for man to need anything if it were not already in existence. Could you need air if there were no such thing in existence? It indicates the fact that all one needs to do is to let go of the sense of need and accept the fact implied in the need, that it is already in existence. That thought ought to be is. This is true, what we refer to as the limitation of the physical body. This is an hypnotic influence of the mind wholly. It has no basis in fact at all. Man brought the sense of material into existence and not the body. The mortal body is the hypnotic body, and when man awakes from this state of hypnosis, all this experience will be to him just a nightmare. He wakes to dream no more. If he feels the need of a radiant spiritual body, void of limitation and expressing the glorious light body that is his perpetual dream, this is the foreshadowing in his consciousness of his fully awakened state. The thought, the need, the desire is the evidence of the fact that such a state already exists for him, and his only achievement is accepting its existence. This ideal state is the true state of man. This body does not need to be spiritualized. It is already spiritual, but man's false belief about it have shut his mind to its radiance and limitlessness. Spirit is always spirit. Man creates materiality. There is but one body, and that body is spiritual. It is the temple of the living God, and God is the temple. Let all the earth rejoice before God. If you call the body material, it is denying God and profaning the temple. If you call the body or any true condition material, you are denying God. You are worshipping a material condition more than you are worshipping God. That is how you get into hypnosis. The moment that you deny God, you are in a hypnotic influence, and the moment you see the body as material, you are in a hypnotic influence wherein you deny God. The body is an instrument through which to express God. It is the greatest known instrument to express spirit. It is brought here definitely for you to present God every moment, not to present materiality or hypnosis or psychism, not to present phenomena, but to present spirit. We are God. We cannot make separation, and if we refuse completely all separation, we would be out of all material conditions and all psychic phenomena. This is how man comes to know and understand the one presence and one power. It is all one power, one reality, and everything works and operates under that one power and one presence according to its own law. It is not adulterated with any other notion, but moves as itself in its own complete field. A God-man is a genius. Christ standing forth, man expressing God without reserve or restraint. The reason children are often found to express what we call unusual genius is only that they have not yet been hypnotized with the idea of limitation possessed by those about them. If they continue to escape this hypnotic spell, they remain geniuses, or their divine self throughout the earth experience. They do not experience the earth, they experience their universality and the Christ self always. These illumined souls or masters or avatars do not write books because of the utter simplicity of their teachings. There's nothing to be said or written about I am, for it is complete within itself. The life they live is its own revelation. It is a book of life revealed, opened as a scroll, and needs no testimony but itself. When you reach the top, you pull the stairs up with you. Therefore, there is no teaching to give. There is but the fact of life, the truth of life revealed as itself, as it always has been and always will be. Steps as man would teach and write about are but degrees to which he lets go of falsity. He had better let it all go at once, for to think yourself there is to be there, as the masters say. Our scientists are telling us that there is not a human body in existence over 7 years old. That is, the cells are completely renewed every 7 years. That is not putting a limitation on life, because life moves in cycles and not years, and you cannot limit a cycle. It has no real beginning, and it does not come to an end. It is the eternal process of fulfilling itself and the eternal renewing process going on within the instrument thought which it expresses. Life does not end at 7, nor does life ever end. Life is eternal. There is not a thing in existence that does not have life. All planets are alive, everything has life, the rock has life. When we express life, it's true. When we express life in its true and unlimited natural expression, we can and will be our own books and teachers. Also, if you can appreciate the fact that all of the cells of the body are renewed every 7 years, you will begin to realize the possibilities of life. If you will keep your mind continually renewed as the processes of life unfold, you will begin to see that life might just as well go on cycle after cycle or continuously. The buds on a tree are just as young, whether the tree be old or young, and the bud has the completed tree within itself. The tree does not grow old, except through the limitation of years that man puts upon it. Nothing grows old except through the concept that man places upon it. The scriptures teach that he was given dominion over all things. Life cannot be measured by years, and we should cease to attempt it. Life can be measured only by itself, and life is eternal, ever-present, and limitless. It is the vital action of the entire system called the universe or God. Man places the limitation on time by delineating time for its own convenience, and that delineation does not restrict life or time by any means, except so far as its manifest possibilities are concerned. The life of the masters is not passed in what the world would call gainful occupations. They have passed that. Their life is of service always, many of them going about from place to place assisting in what we would look upon as material ways with material things. We have never seen them accepting anything from anyone for themselves. We have seen them give out food and clothing and supplies of all descriptions. A master is a servant. If he is a master, he is above the world, and the world can give him nothing. He must reverse the process, and he in return give to the world. In this service they do not seem to seek out people, nor do people necessarily seek them out. The masters come across those in need in their everyday life as they go about among the people. They also assist in a universal attitude as well as through thought and the projection of thought. They also project conditions of perfection into the whole world. Of course, where an individual does appeal to them for help, there's always the assistance ready. We have seen them not only assisting the individual, but great groups of individuals. But even while they are going on with that work, they are evidently sending out emanations to the whole world, which in time will cure the condition they are working on locally. They say it is necessary to work locally to assist people to a better understanding, and in many cases a better understanding comes. As far as we know, they take very little sleep, not in excess of 2 hours a day, and they are conscious during these 2 hours. It is a well-known fact that you can get along without sleep if you know how to live without wasting your energies or contracting your consciousness through separating yourself from the universal energies. The Western world and the way they live causes sleep to become more or less a condition brought about by, as we say it, a toxic state of the body. The toxic condition overcomes a great extent the rebuilding process of the body, and thousands of people are in that toxic state instead of being in a true condition of sleep. When Jesus said, "Awake thou that sleepest," he meant to arise from that comatose condition, and then you are out of the influence to which you have become subject. The Western world consumes at least 10 times as much energy as the body needs, and then consumes energy to digest that food. The energy, which is used to handle this 9/10 of the surplus food that we take unnecessarily, could be used much more effectively to build up the body. It is a well-known fact that today the Western world eats at least 10 times as much food as is healthful. If we would take life direct or energy direct from the ethers, we would be adding energy to our bodies all the time instead of giving it out to assimilate food. It would go directly to every organ of the body and rebuild and renew it. It is not necessary that one be with a master or contact a master in any sense to understand life and its possibilities. Life is perfectly understandable at every corner of the earth. It is omnipresent, and anyone may contact it if he will return his attention in that direction and get away from the mere forms which life uses and through which life expresses. If you will take this simple attitude, that all the life that you can live is life, and begin to exalt life, you would then be doing what you would do if you were living with them. There is nothing phenomenal regarding their life at all. Usually people going to them look only for phenomena. If we live life, we cannot help but understand life. Life is a process of inward force working itself into outward form. It is the vital principle of the universe animating all space and all form. So many people have the notion that the masters lay down certain rules for your daily practice, a certain daily regimen of mental and physical exercises, but that is not so. There are many who lead out with this sort of teaching, of course, to the point where the student recognizes that he himself is a master. Then the way is opened to meet the actual master. The moment that man gets into his mind that there is any life to live other than the one life, he is out of harmony completely. The difficulty is with this mental application always. Man did not fall and die spiritually. He simply got himself out of harmony with life, and this resulted in all his difficulty. The moment life becomes hard, it is not life. That individual is out of life just to the degree that any inharmony develops, and this state should be a warning of him to get back into life as it is. Children are happy because they live life abundantly. They put no limitation upon life whatsoever. The moment we put limitation upon life, we cease to live abundantly. There is not a limiting condition in life. Life could not limit itself. It could not be kept away except through your own attitude of thought towards it. No two individuals have the same vision of life. It is quite often illustrated in this way. It is said that only children and sages are happy because the children has not developed a material sense of value, and the sages know that the material has no value. To them, form is not the point of consideration, but living life. One man may look at life through a very narrow opening in a wall. That person says, "I see all of life." The view may face a hill where there is nothing but rocks. The next may see trees. The next one sees animated forms moving about. If we look through but one small opening, we soon hypnotize ourselves into believing that there is no other life within the greater expanse of the universe of life. If we would take this attitude alone, see the universe as embodying and expressing the one infinite life, then we would expand our vision to take in all of life, and there would be no limitation whatever for us. It is a misconception to think that the masters live an ascetic life. We have never found them so living. You will find them in a loincloth or in the highest walks of life. You will not find them isolating themselves at all. There are a very few compared to the whole, living in seclusion in order to give out more fully to the whole world certain conditions for betterment, but they are only groups who come together for that specific purpose. They do not live an ascetic life at all. You may see a yogi living an ascetic life for a certain time for a certain purpose only, but then they never allow asceticism to become hypnotic. Yogi means living for a great experiment. Many of the so-called holy men of India live a complete ascetic life, but usually they are beggars and not masters. A great many of them are as dirty and as filthy as anything you can imagine. They are leeches on humanity and nothing else. But they are not the masters. Just because a man goes about saying mantrams or sitting in samadhi, he is not thereby a master. We have never known any one of those who have reached a high accomplishment begging of anyone, but they are giving all of their time to the betterment of humanity. They do not beg anything to give away even. They have, as they put it, all that they want and to spare always. They do not go around and beg for others to give. They do not organize charitable institutions. They go out and assist all of the time, separating themselves by their accomplishments. There are thousands of people in India who are giving out continually, and yet we have never known any of them to take a penny from anyone. The beggars who call themselves holy men are such only by their own designation. They have nothing to do with the masters. Life is always a matter of giving. To draw on the universal life that flows freely throughout infinite space is the privilege of anyone, and his way of living life should be to receive from this source and then give it out to all who are around him, inspiring them to seek life where he has found it. This is not only the work of the masters, but it is the work all men should be doing. This is living life as it should be lived, and is really the only life there is. To merely receive from those about you is not life at all, but a constantly contracting existence. To seek life from the material world is to lose it. To advance, you must see yourself as a master. You must conduct yourself as a master. There is no one who can teach you mastery, nor is there anyone who can give you mastership, for they are already yours. Practice is required. You must live as a master lives, think as a master thinks, and act like a master acts before you would know a master if you were to meet one. Just how do you think a master would meet the situation you have to face every day? Try meeting your problems in the same way. How would a master speak to those about him? Try speaking in the same way. What would a master's attitude be towards those about him? Try expressing the same attitude. Could you imagine a master worrying about business? Would a master gossip and hate and become jealous or angry? Would he flinch at some particular task? Well, there is a pattern for you, for your own idea of how a master would face life is exactly the way you should be facing it. If you will so face life, conscious that this is the determination moving in the universe with which you are, you will find the seeds of your own mastership sprouting and growing into their full stature. Can you not certainly see that what they have always taught us is true? That it is not necessary for you to sit long hours in samadhi, or to go through mystical rites and religious forms to come into illumination. They have prepared the way. They have proved that when you work outside the mind with its thoughts and just enter into life as it is, and you are then in the state of mastership, and by so continuing until it is your own attitude as you face life, that you are then a master. Drop that self which you seem to be and begin to live your life as you inherently feel you should live it, and you will find that to be truly your life. Nor is it at all necessary for you to journey to India to find your master or teacher as many students believe. Your teacher and your master is your own self. The masters in Jesus do not journey in the world for their knowledge and power. They look within themselves to that self which is the God within, and that is why they are masters. So long as you seek outside of yourself that which is to be found only within yourself, you will not find it. It is this way you will always be able to know the teachings of a real master. The unillumined tell you that you must find some teacher outside yourself, but a master tells you that you must find the teacher within. This is the main point which Christ tried to make clear to the world. Lo here and lo there is the Antichrist teaching. The Father within is the true Christ teaching. It is now seen what you find moving in yourself, that deepest side of your own nature, you must be doing outwardly. Practice makes perfect, and it is by practicing your own mastership or living life as it should be lived, doing as you instinctively feel a master would be doing, that you will find that all you have been seeking is already here, completely manifest. All that was necessary was that you completely step out of character as you have been living, and into the new character, living as life should be lived. When one learns to live from the soul, the self, and not from the mind, everything in life is clear and understandable. You know what you should do, where you should go, and life becomes simple and harmonious. That is life as it is intended, life as it is, life as we must ultimately live it. Children only live in the realm of thought when we have taught them to do so. They live naturally in the beginning, and we should become like them and not make them like ourselves. That does not mean we shall live unintelligent lives and that we will have no thoughts. It means that we will truly live intelligently and that our thoughts will be the outcome of properly expressing the inner self. It is true, to make this complete change from what we appear to be to what we really are, to enter into life as it is, will require some determination. Whatever the Hindu's belief is, he gives his all for it. He will walk hundreds of miles to fulfill what he believes to be a spiritual duty. When we are equally intent upon being what we instinctively feel we should be, we shall arrive without difficulty. We must quit hoping and wishing and set about doing and being. Volume 5. What is the best path to pursue to obtain illumination? The path is right within. Search ever deeper within yourself. Know that this great light belongs to you. That is all that is necessary. How does man get rid of the idea of man not being God? By refusing to accept the negative statement. The statement, I am God, frees you from the negative statement that you are not God. It is better to state the truth than the untruth. If you make the statement, I am God, and are unable to accept your unity, is it not a matter of blind faith? If you made it wholly on blind faith, you have made a separation and will fall short of the goal. It is far better to say I can, and then go right on to I am. If you accept the I can't attitude, you have accepted a separation from God. If man is God and God is spirit, where did the material body originate? As a hypnotic influence in the mind of man, it has no basis in fact. Man brought the material into existence. The mortal body is a hypnotic body, and when man wakes from that state, it will be to him as a nightmare. He wakes to dream no more. The easiest and most successful way of attainment to the highest goal is forever to let go or drop the thought structure that has bound one to the wheel of repetition, and set into immediate action that which will build up an invincible thought structure which will never fail in carrying one to the highest. The first suggestion is to place in one's mind the thought and word, God, knowing positively that it is the one point from which and where all success originates, also from which all success emanates. Then fix that thought of success with a thought, God, I am success. The next thought, God, I am abundantly able to succeed in every effort that I truthfully designate. Your next statement will be, God, I am the exact knowledge that goes with the abilities to succeed. Your next statement will be, God, I am the infinite love that attracts all substance to me that brings forth my success. Knowing also that love is the greatest cohesive power in the universe, your next statement will be, God, I am the intelligence that guides all of my success into the right and profitable channels. This will be followed by, God, I am the divine knowledge and the wisdom that gives the perfect to all of my success. Followed with, God, I am the perfect Trinity, God the conquering Christ, God-man, the unfocal point of all creation. Try this. I am of the noble God mind, and see it open the windows of heaven and let it pour out such a blessing that it fills completely every avenue of expression. All those who are faithful need say, God, I am the knowing principle of all things. This opens the eye to the universal abundance that never fails. Try it knowing positively that you must succeed. As Elijah did, hold out the cup until it's filled to running over. Never doubt the capacity of the one mind. It is always ready to bring forth these wonders as humanity aligns itself with God-mind. What is your attitude towards the present upsetting social conditions? I do not give them any energy. If we would withdraw the energy we give to thinking about upsetting conditions and build up our own bodily conditions with that energy instead, we could correct any conditions immediately. It is said that we make a success of everything we undertake. If it is failure we undertake, we make a success of that. If it is perfection we undertake, we make a success of that. How much better is it to present perfection than imperfection? If we did no more than assist our neighbor, it would be much better than to present imperfection to him. We would get more out of life, and it wouldn't cost us a penny. It costs nothing to greet him with a smile. Present love to him, and perfection will follow right along the same line. Think of an assemblage joining with just that one object in view: youth, beauty, purity, and perfection. Is it going to cost us anything to live by those ideals? If we would live with those ideals always foremost, we would change our conditions within a week's time. We have seen it accomplished within a moment. Talk to the divinity within. Tell it that you know, that it is there, and that you have now become fully aware of its presence. Ask it to come forth and be the dominating factor in your life. Say, I now have let go and now put out of my life all adverse thoughts. I am grateful that divinity is fully established throughout my entire being. Determine that you will no longer be an animal, that your entire body is now so pure that the holy presence of the living God has attained full possession of this body temple, and that it is now in complete charge. Keep these thoughts constantly in mind. Then say, I now know the bliss and satisfaction that spring forth from the union of the soul with the living Christ. And that bliss and satisfaction do abide in me throughout all eternity. I know the presence of the living Christ is fully established in me, and I am the pristine purity of the Christ. Keep these statements before the subconscious or subjective mind, and you will soon experience the joy and the satisfaction that have always been yours through the presence of the living Christ. Soon you will find that you do generate mental forces that supplant all adverse thoughts, feelings, and actions. You do build up a momentum of pure thought that is irresistible and that dominates your entire world. The time to fortify this spiritual and holy temple is when we are at peace with our own soul. In this way, we so educate the subjective mind that it gives forth nothing but divine impressions. This sinks deep into our consciousness and operates during every hour of our sleep. When we find a weak spot in our thoughts, words, or deeds, it is necessary to bring the will into full action to strengthen and fortify these rents in the structure. Soon we learn automatically to conquer all adverse thoughts, and only God thoughts and God feelings have residence in our worlds. Then do we truly have the armies of our thoughts and feelings so marshaled that nothing but God is able to enter. This is the degree of absolute mastery, where one attains the ability to make the divine principle manifest. Thus we are the basis of all spiritual power. You will find that it pays great dividends as you make it your work in life. You now see the dawn of a new day, and you do gain a greater understanding of the law. There is no more effective way to free your mind and world of discord than positively to know that your entire mind and body is the temple of the living God. You can also use this statement with the knowledge that through the silent but far-fetching influence of divine thoughts, all of humanity, in fact the entire universe, is benefited and raised by every constructive thought, feeling, and spoken word sent out by you. The more you think of the immortal love of God, the greater the enlightenment of humanity manifests. Thus you can see and understand, in a measure, the tremendous privilege and opportunity which is ours in assisting in the uplifting and enlightenment of mankind. What is more, it is our responsibility and our obligation to life to help erase or dissolve the negative in the world of humanity. And one of the most powerful ways to do this is by refusing to see, hear, or accept the negative, and consciously to send forth divine love to everyone and everything. Know firmly that the divine spirit of the conquering Christ transcends all discord. Know always that your will is the divine will, God's will, and that God is acting through you every moment. Each thought that you qualify with this master thought increases your willpower, and your willpower becomes so strong that your very thought is irresistible. Do this and expect results with all sincerity, and nothing can disturb you. The persistent daily use of such strong positive words and thoughts, repeated with great intensity, develops dormant brain cells, and you soon know that you are the Lord in full dominion. Exercise your will and your word for all purposes, and you become the master of your own mind, and no longer accept the negative qualities in the world around you. As you are faithful over a few things, you become master over all things. Create through your word the condition that is rightfully yours, and you are the master over all conditions. Physiologists now state that the cells comprising the organism of our bodies have the power to receive impressions and carry them to the complete cellular structure of the human form. Also the power to recall impressions, or memory, the power to compare impressions or judgment, and the power to select between good impressions and imperfect impressions. It is also well determined that the subjective or subconscious mind is the aggregate energy and intelligence of all the bodily cells. By putting forth only divine impressions, all of the cells again become aware of the divinity of each cell, and they transmit this divinity to every cell of the human form. Were this not true, no photograph could be taken of the human form. As this becomes known to the individual, the will force of each individual cell agrees and works in harmony with the will of the organ or center to which it belongs and to which it will attach itself. It is the power of all of the will cells composing the organ or center, and it is brought into conscious harmony with the central will of the entire organism of the human body. Then as we use the words, God, I am, it is fully manifest through the entire bodily form. It also gives greater power to the next spoken words, such as, I am God power, I am all abundance, and so on. And through this word of power, I am free from all limitations. An incident that happened at Calcutta University. I joined what is known there as a preparatory school for Calcutta University when I was 4 years old. The very first day I attended, the teacher said to me, "Here's the alphabet. What do you think about that?" I said, "I don't know," and he replied, "Well, if you keep that up, you never will know. Now turn right around and let go of that I don't know, and know that you know what that is." And through that very thing I went through that school and went on and completed Calcutta University when I was 14 years old. These things are so simple we pass them up. We think when we go to the university that we have to get in and dig it all out of books. Anything that has ever been written in a book is already known. If you will take that position, you will know it too. You make a book a crutch to get along with, instead of accepting that it is already within yourself. You are the master. You master those things. And that is possible in all walks of life. And we are beginning to recognize that as we learn to rise out of our negative conditions or consciousness, gradually we are learning that it has been no value to us, so why keep it up? The value is to know and be that very thing that you pronounce, and from there on you will continue to go ahead. When I was in Spain at one of the largest copper mines in the world, a Russian family with a little girl 11 years old moved over there, and the father was working in the mine. They told me their child had what was known as the healing touch. She would put her hand on a person and say, "I love you, and I love you so much that your illness has passed away. It is gone. I have filled that space with love." And we have found that to be true. In the case of a deformity, the body would become absolutely perfect. I saw a person in almost the last stage of epilepsy. This girl put her hand on that individual and said, "Your whole body is full of love, and I see only the light." In less than 3 minutes, that malady was gone completely. The light and love emanating from her being was so powerful, we could actually see it and feel it. When I was a small boy, I was playing with some of the children just outside of our home. Darkness was approaching very rapidly, for in India there is no twilight. One little boy picked up a stick and hit me across the arm and broke both bones, and my hand fell right back. Of course, at first it was terribly painful, and then my thoughts went to the statement I had been given by my teacher: "Go into the darkness and put your hand in the hand of God, for that is better than a light and safer than a known way." The light just surrounded me, and almost instantly the pain vanished completely. I climbed up into a great banyan tree to be alone, and the light still surrounded me. I looked at it as a presence, but I'll never forget the incident. And as I sat there alone in that tree, the hand righted itself. I remained up in the tree all night. The next morning there was no sign of a break except for a ridge around the 2 bones which had been broken. Now my parents thought I had been cared for and put to bed by the servants. When I told them the next morning what had happened, they couldn't believe it and took me to a doctor immediately. He said the bones had been broken, but they were knitted together perfectly now. From that day on, the hand never bothered me. I merely cite a few of these instances as examples because they are so simple and so natural that all may do the same. I have seen where the building itself responded to the love poured out by an entire audience. As the immortal Gautama Buddha has said, to give 5 minutes to the realization of true divine love is greater than to pass 1,000 bowls of food to the needy, because in giving love, you help every soul in the universe. It melts right down, of course, to the words we use and the thoughts and the feelings we have. Words are things, thoughts are things. Where your thoughts are, you are. When we learn to discipline and control our thoughts and feelings, and use only the positive, constructive words sent forth with divine love, our body and mind respond to that righteousness, right use-ness. The right use and selection of words is of vital importance, but equally important is the feeling behind those words. For the feeling is the motivating power that makes the words live. This is where divine love enters in. It doesn't mean we are to go around saying, love, love, love. We speak the words once, with feeling, with vision, with conviction, with acceptance, and instantly the law moves into action to bring it into fulfillment. Before ye has spoken, I have answered. It is already there. In the words of Buddha, use love, concentrate upon it, treat yourself with love morning, noon, and night. And as you sit down to partake of your food, use love, think it, feel it, and your food will taste a lot better. It has been said that man's greatest mistake is in trying to become God instead of simply being. He has been looking for something that is right within himself. We don't try to become, we must simply be. We are it, and we claim it, definitely. If you don't really believe that, you try it in some time, for say 2 weeks. I would suggest you say it once and know it, and then go on and be it. It is yours. It is yours to command. You are in control of the storms. You are in control of the atmospheric conditions. Every one of you. You are in control of every natural element. It doesn't matter what it is. You are master of it. And it is for you to become master of it. Instead of that, we let it get us down, as we say, and we become subordinate to the condition or situation or circumstance. There is not one person in this room who, if he would step forth, could not master every situation that arises, simply by knowing that he is the master. Animals are very sensitive to these things. They respond when you give them thoughts of kindness. They even recognize when you send out thoughts of kindness to others. The dog recognizes feelings immediately. We had over 1,100 dogs in Alaska for our mail routes there. We had the mail routes up there for a long time. We used over 1,100 dogs before the plane came in, and you know every one of our men came to the point where they never used a whip. Those dogs were just as tractable as could be, just as long as the men did not disturb or upset them. I made 9 trips with dogs over that trail, a distance of 1,800 miles. Twice I never changed a dog, and still those dogs came through in a very wonderful shape. Everybody asked how I did it. I just let the dogs alone, urged them on, told them that they were all right, going ahead doing fine, and so on. The other men began doing that, and it made a great difference. If you do not fear an animal or mistreat it, but praise it and encourage it, it will respond wonderfully. The moment we use a negative word, we are taking energy from our body to keep it going. We hypnotize ourselves into believing that it is a fact, and that hypnotic influence is what carries us right on to repeat it again and again. Now, if we no longer permit ourselves to become hypnotized by those negative thoughts, and refuse ever to repeat them again, or even to think them, they disappear from our worlds completely. If we would let go of old age, lack of eyesight, and imperfections in the body, these negative conditions would not register in the physical form. Our body is being renewed all the time, and that is really the resurrection. That resurrection takes place every 9 months throughout all of humanity. We put the imprint upon those body cells ourselves by our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own speech. We are our own betrayers. We betray the Christ with the simple word, can't, every time we use the word. Every time we use a negative word, we betray the Christ within ourselves. Let us therefore extol the Christ, bless the body for its service, give praise and thanks for our countless blessings, and be the living manifestation of the law of every moment. Why does it seem to be so difficult to hold the mind to an ideal? We have not the definite training which those in the East have had. There even the children have it. They are shown that when one ideal is projected, they are to keep the ideal until they have its full accomplishment. The training in the Western world is somewhat different. We are allowed to let every thought come running through, scattering our forces. If you have an ideal and fully believe in it, keep it entirely to yourself, not mentioning it to another until it is completely consolidated into form. Always keep the mind clear for that one thing which you must accomplish, not that which you will. That keeps the mind clear. The moment we allow another thought to come in, we become dual-minded. By expressing energy towards that one ideal, we become single-minded. Nor would we get into a rut or become one-track-minded, for we would not need to dwell on that ideal for more than an instant if we directed every force towards it and did not scatter our forces. From then on, we simply give thanks that it is accomplished and that it is here and now. Dead yogi still lives. Read the headlines in the Los Angeles papers in reporting the passing of Paramahansa Yogananda, founder of the Self-Realization Fellowship in Los Angeles, California. Mortuary technicians today revealed the amazing story of Paramahansa Yogananda as his body lay in a state of self-realization headquarters here. They say his body is still not technically dead 20 days after his death. The mortuary director of the cemetery declared that the body of Yogananda, who died during a speech at the Biltmore Hotel, was under daily observation by his staff from March 7th to March 27th, when the bronze casket was sealed. The absence of any visual signs of decay in the body of Paramahansa Yogananda offers the most extraordinary case in our experience, said the mortuary director in notarized letter to Self-Realization Fellowship. Now, in reference to Yogananda's body, that was not a miracle. We have seen bodies that have been lying in suspended animation, it has been claimed, for 600 years. My great-great-grandfather observed such a body a long time ago. That is just north of the line between Kashmir and the Pakistan of today, and it has been there ever since. That body, of course, was laid down as a sign of the displeasure aroused in India, first by the Mohammedan invasion, then child marriage, and also the deep caste system that invaded India. It was lain there ever since. It is about 14 years since I last saw the body. Also, I was in the vicinity during the First World War. At that time, there were over 200 British soldiers trapped in the mountains north of this place, and they asked for safe transportation through this country. And as they came out into India, again they observed the body. The captain has spent great many years in India, and had a great respect for the Hindu people, and they also respected him. He explained to his soldiers that if they wished to observe the body, the company would halt there to see it, but they must give their word of honor that they would not attempt to touch the body, thus conforming to the wish of the people and the community. So many people have gone to view that body that the flagstones that lie around the canopy where this body is lying are worn through. Many Eastern philosophers say, if you would worship youth, beauty, purity, and perfection as definitely as you worshipped old age, you would accomplish that condition of eternal youth. You would achieve eternal youth. In fact, you could not do otherwise. This is not by any means to decry old age, but it is to show the attitude of thought that brings it on. Would it not be better to reverence men for the youth, beauty, and measure of perfection they express, rather than for an old age? The very ideal belongs to a body widely accepted as created in the image of its maker. The divinity that man accepts as belonging to him reaches in highest expression in youth, beauty, and purity. We project conditions for ourselves to follow. We all admit that we can use it with the wrong attitude. But if we work towards perfection, perfection must result. No one accomplishes anything unless he becomes one with the object, forgetting all other conditions. Bringing it down to a very simple fact. If we state definite, positive ideas for ourselves to accomplish, then we do accomplish those very conditions readily. One point, one direction. Never allow the thought to vary for an instant to any negative condition. We have seen many changes in healings, positive conditions brought out of negative surroundings without a word being spoken. This has been evidence to us that the principle does manifest with every attitude of positive thought. But the thoughts must always be conclusively positive. Those who have developed the power to accomplish these things at will, we know as masters, because they have mastered the forces of nature. They do not deal with conditions as if perfections were a rare phenomenon. Perfection is a natural state which may be attained by following natural conclusions. Always. Your body is indestructible. We ourselves allow this body to be destroyed. The very thoughts and feelings that we impose upon the body are the creators of age, disease, and disintegration. It is well known today that every cell in our bodies is renewed in less than a year. One of the greatest fallacies ever imposed on humanity is the 70 years and 10. We know men and women who are over 2,000 years old. Now, if one can live 2,000 years, he can live for eternity. That is exactly what Jesus meant when he said, "The last enemy to be overcome is death." What is the great expression that brings all things? I am abundance. This statement opens every avenue of expression and closes none. It recognizes the presence of God in all things and conscious unity of the self with the source of all good. You will find that this was the teaching of Jesus. It was abundance always, with no limitation whatever. I am knowledge. I am harmony. Use of these expressions will vitalize the energy in the body so that there results a new awareness of the abundance of knowledge and harmony. Nor is the energy depleted through free use in daily life. But if one has abundance, others must have it. As we assume that attitude, we shall come to know that if one does not have abundance, none can be prosperous. If we believe we are not prosperous, it is because we have isolated ourselves from the freely flowing abundance and built up the idol of lack. We have made believe we are just a part of the whole, but everyone is merged in the whole, because there is completion only in that unity. If one were out, it would not be complete. The moment we realize our unity with a completed condition, we find that we express it outwardly. Worship of God with all our hearts and all our strength frees us from conditions of limitation. No one need be isolated. It is possible to realize that sense of union with God's abundance right now. The first determination must be an effort to get rid of the individual sense of limitation that we ourselves have built. There are several rather definite steps that must be taken to free the self from limitation. There is no situation that cannot be conquered. Happiness, prosperity, and abundance belong to all. The greatest bar is the lack of acceptance. Religious doctrines have all too often emphasized theory instead of practice. Repetition of such an attitude limits our understanding of truth to the physical things, and we lose the spiritual significance. When Jesus was asked regarding the answer of prayer, he said that the reason prayer was not answered was that the asking had been amiss. You will find that if you stand definitely with a positive declaration, you will not need to use words at all. The moment that you realize within yourself that abundance already exists for you, at that very moment the condition manifests for you, then you do not need outside suggestion. You are in perfect harmony with principle. The instant you think of any condition, you are one with it. You will find that if you stand definitely with a situation, you will never need to repeat a petition. It is finished before you ask. Jesus said, "While they are asking, I have heard." Then he went right on and said, "Before it is spoken, it is already accomplished." Do we need to go on asking for a condition that is already accomplished? How many times can a condition be completed? Need we beg for something that is already ours? No. You can trace the lives of our greatest men and see how they accepted accomplishment. Deep in the subconscious, the way of accomplishment already existed. With freedom from any sense of limitation, they were able to express that which already existed. It is through complete lack of division that we stand as principle. How could we be in want if we put God in the place of want? Principle is harmonious and flows according to definite laws, with which man must learn to work. Just rejoice in God, your very self, and free every limitation. Also recall that one instant is all eternity. I thank you, God, for life and light abundant, full and free, for perfect abundance, wealth and power, and unhampered liberty. Think for a moment how we have trained ourselves to accept and believe and worship degrading untruths. Then let us think or suppose just for a moment that had we never heard or been taught these words of untruth, and that they had never been lodged into our vocabulary, we would never have known them, accepted, or learned or believed or worshipped them. If we are capable of learning them and believing them, we are far more capable of unlearning them by demanding that they leave every time they come up or are repeated to us from the subconscious. Just say to them, "You are completely forgiven, so leave me entirely alone." Then say to your subconscious, "Just erase all of those and accept no record, only the truth as I set forth." How can you express youth, beauty, purity, divinity, perfection, and abundance until you see, feel, hear, and know them and put them forth in thought, word, action, and expression? Yes, by worshipping them. By so doing, you impress them on or into your subconscious thought, and this subconscious thought reflects these thoughts back to you from the pictures you have presented to it, through the vibration that you have established or set up there. You will soon find that it is no more trouble for the subconscious thought to repeat the truth that you are sending forth to it than it is to repeat the former untruths that you had previously imposed upon it. The more you impress the truth upon your subconscious by love and worship, the more it will send it back to you. This is where you are the master, for by forgiving the untruths and letting go of them, you will find that you have mastered them. You are above and beyond them. They are forgiven and forgotten. You will find by talking to your body, the subconscious of you, and knowing that what you are saying is the absolute truth, it outpictures. For if this that you are telling the body is not the truth, you would not have a body. You would in no way be able to think, act, move, speak, feel, see, hear, breathe, or live. Here is a story of Luther Burbank. One Sunday afternoon, as he walked with his father over to visit a neighbor, they took a short-cut through the fields and passed through a potato patch. As children will do, little Luther Burbank ran ahead. It was at a time when the potato blooms were ripening. One stem was standing up a little higher than all the others, and Luther stopped to look at it. And his father said, when he came up, that the flower was waving back and forth, and the boy said to him, "Papa, that's talking to me." "Well," the father told my father, "I thought the boy was going wrong, and I hurried him on and went over to the neighbor's." All the time they were there, Luther was anxious to return, and finally, about 3:30, they started homeward. They returned through the same potato field, the boy rushing ahead and going directly to the same plant. There was a great calm over the field, not a leaf moved. When the father came up to where the boy was standing, the tall seed pod was moving again back and forth, and Luther said, "Papa, I want to stay here. Jesus is talking to me and telling me what to do." His father took him home and made him do his chores and sent him to bed. In a short time he found him stealing downstairs and trying to get out of the house. He was sent back to bed 3 different times that night. By that time it was 11 o'clock, and the parents thought the boy was asleep for the night. The next morning Luther was missing. The father walked out into the field, and there he found the boy wrapped around the potato hill, just as close as he could get to it, sound asleep. When he was awakened, he said, "Papa, Jesus talked with me all night long, and he told me that if I would watch the little bulb until it ripened, take it and preserve it, and plant the seed the next spring, then when it developed, there would be one potato there that would make me famous." And that is just what happened. Luther Burbank also worked with the cactus. he took the prickly pear and put it into a glass cage where it was protected. For 5.5 months, he sat before the case 1 hour each day and talked to that prickly pear something like this. Now you are protected. You don't need those spikes. Let them go. In 7.5 months, the spikes had dropped off. He had the spikeless cactus. Luther Burbank used to say, "Why, I walk and talk with Jesus, and he with me. He teaches me. He tells me what to do." F. L. Rawson was a brother to Sir Rawson Rawson, one of the great engineers of England. He was called in by the Daily Mail to investigate Christian Science, and he did such a remarkable work that they were all astonished. His first statement was, "There's nothing but God in God's perfect world. Man is the image, the likeness, passing on God's ideas to his fellow man with perfect regularity and ease." One day when I was visiting Mr. Rawson in London, we stood at a window looking out across the street. In London years ago, they used 2-wheel carts drawn by 1 horse. Construction work was in progress across the way, and a horse pulling a 2-wheeled cart came down the street, halted, backed up. The driver went to the back of the cart, and suddenly, before the eye could catch what happened, the box turned up and tipped the whole load of rock right on him. F. L. Rawson's statement was, "There's nothing but God," and that man seemed to come right up through the rocks, and he didn't have a scratch on him. Another thing happened in the same connection. The horse didn't do something that suited him, and the owner started to beat the horse. All Mr. Rawson did was to tap on the window to attract the man's attention. The horse immediately walked over and put his nose up against the window. F. L. Rawson took 100 men into World War I and came out without a scratch on any of them, and they went through some of the most rugged assignments. He stood absolutely for the statement, "There is nothing but God." In Volume 3, Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, you speak of being with the Masters and arriving at places where it would seem you in the physical could not go. Would you give us a little light on that? Many times the transference of our bodies was without our knowledge. It is evident that if we project our vision to a definite place, we would be at that place the instant the projection is completed. The only thing that keeps us from being at that destination is that we accept that some outer force holds us where we are. If we would let go of that limitation, we would be in the place we vision instantly. We would be in perfect harmony with a condition that would take us instantly to the place where our vision is located. The vibration of the body transferred is much higher. It becomes one with those vibrations which operate at a greater frequency. We have an electronic body which is with us always, and that body is the body in which we actually live. It is only another determination for the actual life we live. As a matter of fact, we have one body in which we live that has all the attributes of being. If we do not make a division, we could be wherever we willed instantly. It is possible to leave behind this body, but it is the greater thing to take it with you always. Does every soul have to make the ascension as did Jesus? No, but they will make the ascension as they see it. You are never bound to any one condition or any form of condition. You are bound to your own determination of that condition. You are perfectly free to make the ascension at any instant, and you are always living to a higher level because you are presenting that ideal. What about those who are supposed to have died? They are not in death. That body is what we look on as inactive. The life is not with the body. It has left that body and goes on just the same. It is only a change, and the death is a mistaken idea. How will we be able to contact these masters and work with these laws? If we cannot demonstrate them, we feel hopeless. We must take the attitude that we know these things exist, and then work with them. These masters work with everyone. If we accept the conditions, we bring them forth and do live one with them. No one can give you the things they have. They can only show you the way. We must accomplish from within, because everything is within ourselves. Bringing it forth requires that we accept that it is there, that it is completed and for us. Are your books actual experience or inspiration? Those books contain the experiences we had with those people for 3.5 years. Everything recorded actually happened, and it happened in the physical. Those people function wholly in spiritual conditions, but they are actually the same as our physical conditions. We have our original notes, and the experiences related in the books were taken wholly from those notes. We were invited to bring with us whom we pleased. We chose the most skeptical scientific people. We have the reports of all, and all concur in our conclusions. All state that they went doubting and came away fully believing in the existence of these great conditions. I do not blame you for not believing. We did not believe these things would be universally believed. We believed that each individual should inquire. It was necessary for us to bring these things to a point where we could believe them ourselves. I had many experiences with these things before I went on the expedition. I went doubting, but it was less than 3 weeks after the onset of the expedition that my doubts were cleared. How is it possible to bring about a great change under our present conditions in which people are drinking, gambling, smoking, and doing everything that is bad? The very expressions you have used allow those conditions to go on today. We use such thoughtless words that we allow those conditions to continue. It is better to say that nothing but good and perfect can be. See absolute perfection for all. Do you mean that facts are changed by words and thoughts? It is not what the other fellow thinks. It is what we think that brings about conditions. Our thoughts are creative of the very condition. Any person can return those thoughts with such dynamic force that they would destroy the person sending out the thoughts. Are we then not responsible? Should we objectify our desires or put them forth in definite form, knowing that they are already in existence? Should we say that we want a thing, or should we say, God's will be done? If we say God's will be done, that is the highest attitude. If we say that a thing is ours, that puts us in an attitude of thought of accepting that it is ours. You could not think of a thing unless it was already in existence for you. Every expression can be carried out with that thought in view. Take the attitude that you are one with it and that it is yours to bring forth. Do you think all humanity could raise itself in one incarnation? Yes, this very instant. It is man's rightful inheritance. It is here for us. Had it not been here and already accomplished, we would never have thought of it. Tell us of the separation of planets. Is that the way you account for the distribution of life on other planets? With the right conditions, life could spring up on any planet. Each planet is born from the sun and goes on until human life develops on it. Human life is exactly similar to a planet and is capable of expressing all life. Man has lowered himself by the thoughts he has taken and has been held in the conditions of today, becoming subservient instead of a master. Really, everything is accomplished, and all man has to do is accept it. You say there is an individual in India you know as Jesus. I realize the Christ in me, and I would like to contact the personality of Jesus. You are making an idol of the personality. You don't need to present the personality to present the Christ. What about death? No one ever died who didn't choose to die. We have been told that we must die, but God never told us so. Tell us about reincarnation. It is a remedy for the mistake of death. It is a light on the blind path of death. To the masters, it is not necessary. They accomplish everything right here in this life. There really is no death. It is a mistake. We can prove that photographically. There is never a cessation of life. Consequently, there could be no death. There is no one to make the choice for you. There is no question but that every individual makes that choice. It looks on the photographs as though at the moment the life element leaves the body and goes on. It begins to assemble substance and build a new body. It must have intelligence. The soul is only the vehicle of the spirit. All is spirit always. If there is spirit outside of us, there is spirit within. You cannot make a separation, because in making a separation, you become divided. If we make no separation, we are always at one with that thing. That is what is known as atonement, at-one-ment. It is the body throwing off the worn-out cells. In that way, we die every instant and resurrect every instant. There is not a body in the world which is over 7 years old. It is only the idea we present to the body that gives it the form of age, about 7 years. We grow in accomplishment, but it is not necessary to take on any other condition. But we do. We will not let this body alone. We see only the conditions which surround us. The instant we project an ideal for ourselves that is higher than that in which we have been living, we have made a complete new body and a new situation for that body. That body is definitely electronic or spiritual, whichever you like to pronounce it. Everything is spiritual. You could not define it as anything else but spiritual and live true to form. You may define it as God if you wish. It is all exactly the same thing. It is only the thoughts we take for the body that make it out of that condition. In reality, it is never out of that condition. Can we help to eliminate karma from the minds of others, and how? The greatest assistance we know is to see others standing forth definitely as the Christ. Rising out of limitation. If we saw a person hold out his hand when he needed bread, and instantly a loaf of bread would appear in that hand, we should stand in great awe. This would seem to the Western mind to be a miracle contrary to nature. But upon close study, we see that it is fully possible for everyone to achieve similar phenomena. We have everything that belongs to us. All is here. And we do not bring it from anywhere else. All is accomplished. We need only to project the acceptance, and it is ours to use. I have mentioned often the so-called fakirs in India, who apparently throw a rope into the air, call a boy from the audience, and have him climb up the rope. The boy usually disappears at the top, but sometimes, instead of disappearing, the boy will remain visible at the top of the rope. The fakir, in a seeming rage, climbs after the boy, cuts off his arms and legs, only later to repent and put him back together again. When we attempt to photograph these seeming events, nothing is recorded on the film. What happened? We have studied the phenomena and learned that there are 12 stages of hypnotic influence. The fakir can project the pictures so rapidly and definitely that the audience will accept them as reality. That started an entirely new field of research. Now, through the use of a certain ray, we can so irradiate a plot of ground that after 24 hours, we can plant a kernel of corn which will develop into a fully grown stalk with 2 completed ears upon it within 7 minutes. Another group has been able to develop a bearing grapefruit tree in 6 months, whereas it usually takes 6 years. Carrying on the experiment, we planted a kernel of corn in a plot of ground that had not been irradiated in this way to observe its growth photographically. Whereas the growth of the latter is at the rate of 9 million cells per second, the growth of the former at the rate of 96 billion cells per second. All we have succeeded in doing is to accelerate nature. There has been no unnatural miracle about it. The same principle is involved as when the disciples said to the Master that there was need of food and that it was still 4 months till the harvest. Jesus said, "Look upon the fields, they are white to harvest." We've always pronounced that a miracle. But Jesus explained that it was no miracle and that the slow process we accept as natural is not natural. We, in our lack of progress, put nature back to where it responds to our limitations. Someone has told us that it takes 4 months to grow corn and 6 years to grow a grapefruit. Today it is known that if we release those limitations, nature springs into existence immediately. Now these experiments are expensive, and it is not known how soon they will prove to be practical for everybody, but we can envision that it will be. I can remember when aluminum was worth $450 per ounce. Today it is a common product. The same thing takes place in every line of endeavor. Many of the great conditions have been in existence all along, but it takes people a long time to realize that they themselves are putting on the limitations. Usually experimental work is done in the wrong way. We set up certain conditions, believing that they will accomplish certain results. Today we are going to the result instead of the experiment, knowing first that it has all been worked out in nature and is in existence. You can leave a seed in a metal receptacle, and it will not germinate unless someone comes along who can present life to it. It is known today that there are people who can so project life that it will penetrate every substance. The moment the seed comes in contact with the life emanation that has been put forth, you can observe that vibration dropping right down to the heart of that seed, where it begins the process of growth. There is a man on the Pacific coast who can germinate life in seeds to 90%, where before the percentage was only 30%. Experiments are being made with soil whereby production can be stepped up considerably more. We put the limitations on nature. Nature works in complete harmony with us, and that harmony is instantaneous when we allow the response to come forth. There is not a blade of grass, not a tree, not a flower in existence, but that it came into existence first, through the projection of life from the individual. There is an artist who has made some remarkable experiments. He paints on his canvas the color he wants the plant before him to take on. And as a result, we have some of the most beautiful flowers. Then he can take a cactus and place it in a glass case. He sits before it and tells it that it is now protected and does not need its spines, and should just let them drop off. Finally, the cactus loses its spines. We say that God grows the trees. God does, but it takes the expression emanating from the individual to start it into existence. We accomplish all things. First the acceptance, then take away the barriers to natural progress by letting go of doubt, fear, and superstition, and then the fields are white to the harvest. It can be shown that Jesus knew every one of these conditions and was perfectly familiar with them. He did not hesitate to show all how they could do exactly as he did, if they would let go of or forgive the limitations. Why do we carry these limitations with us? It is only through projecting our thoughts through a lower field where we pick up and repeat them until we take a picture instead of realizing the fact. Eternal youth. When a child is born, we begin at once to impute to it a limitation of 70 years. In doing so, we are building into that child a condition not represented in truth. If instead of placing old age as our goal, we place youth as our goal, and step forward in a determined, positive attitude, we would reach it. It is a well-known fact that men and women are accomplishing it that way today, accomplishing eternal youth. Our great scientists are saying that there is not a human body in existence that is over 7 years old. It can be shown that every cell is changed within 9 4/10 months. Every cell changed, and every cell a complete young unit. Many are actually presenting youth, beauty, purity, and perfection as their goal. The Western world, however, has made old age very largely the ideal of accomplishment. Were we to worship youth as definitely as we worship old age, we would accomplish it. In fact, we could not accomplish anything contrary to it. This is not an attempt to decry old age. In India, where we know definitely of individuals living hundreds of years, we find them held in reverence, not for the old age they represent, but for the youth and beauty they express. We see many so-called cures. They are but the acceptance of that perfection which belongs to every individual when he rids himself of that condition that has kept perfection from him. When perfection floods in, it expresses itself without any thought upon the part of the person affected, save as he turns from that which has kept perfection away. No one accomplishes anything unless he becomes one with that accomplishment. forgetting for a time at least all other conditions. If we state definite, positive facts for ourselves to accomplish, we do accomplish them readily by never allowing the thought to vary to any negative condition. This principle works with every attitude of positive thought. The Masters teach that there is no phenomenon regarding healings or any of the other manifestations that may seem miraculous to us. They say that if we observe closely, we will notice that perfection exists in every form, in every atom, in every cell, in every attitude of thought. We only allow ourselves to become accustomed to other conditions, conditions that have no reality. Then there is the problem of the state of health. We have seen many so-called cures. It could be shown that healings are only the acceptance of the perfection which belongs to every individual. The individual dropped the condition that kept the perfection from him. The perfection floods in and expresses itself without a thought by the person. Unconsciously, they completely let go of limitation. When they arrive at the goal they have set, be it shrine, tomb, holy relic, or what, the perfection manifests. It is evident there could be nothing else happen, for when the conscious mind has accepted the change as accomplished, health has to be expressed. One early fall morning in New York State, the ground was covered with about 2 inches of snow. A group of boys were congregated in the schoolyard, and they were attempting to see which one could make the straightest tracks to a tree over in the corner of the yard. Each boy wavered and was called back, and another given the opportunity. The last lad came up. He walked directly to the tree, and his course did not waver 1 inch out of a straight line. That interested me, and I said, "How did you do it?" He replied, "I just saw that tree. I did not pay any attention to my feet or where they were going. I just saw that tree." That is the way to accomplish by a simple method. The goal of the tree represented perfection. By keeping his eyes only on the goal, without consciously placing his feet, he went directly in a straight line to the point where his thought was projected. We have seen countless healings throughout India. However, in this country, it is evident that some condition keeps away similar blessings. Evidently, the bars that are thrown up are the lack of belief or faith. Perfection always exists in every form. Every atom is perfect. Every cell is organized according to law. The perfections are not attained in our bodies only because we have become accustomed to other conditions, conditions that are not realities at all, conditions that have been separated only by man's idea of them, man's presentation of them. Thus only do we have inharmony and separatedness. Like the boy walking straight to the tree, we must set our ideas on the goal of perfection that we may fulfill the law in ourselves. Now speak to the Christ within and ask the Christ, "Who am I?" The answer will always be, "You are God." For the Christ speaks only absolute truth. Then take no other view. The Christ is always right. It is well known today that any search after a supreme being outside of oneself is futile, as it is to believe that an eternal rigmarole of words will find something outside of themselves. Humanity knows that they must have truth, and they must experience truth for themselves within their heart of hearts. Then they will know that all doubt and discord and darkness vanish. There is a way out of all of this darkness, and that is by knowing that you are the way of God principle, and that you are well established in that principle, and there is no other way. In the first place, every science must have its own method of investigation. In the event that you decided to become an astronomer, you would in no way sit down and cry, "Astronomy, astronomy," without giving any deep thought to the subject. It will never be accomplished. It is the same with any basic science. You will find that certain methods must be followed, and that you must give the subject deep thought and full acceptance, that you are fully capable to accomplish your subject, and that the accomplishment is right within yourself, and the ability to accomplish is that which you put forth. Each science must have its own methods. And as we pursue the truth of divine mind within ourselves, we see it as the basis of all mind action. In fact, this is the truth of all of the sages of all countries, of all ages, people pure and unselfish who had no motive but to do good to the world. Take up this method and concentrate on the fact that you are pure, divine mind action, and that you are the master of your destiny. Concentrate your thoughts upon it, and know that you must observe it as a true science in order to become aware of its full meaning and action. Thus we will come to the basis that we are free, untrammeled souls, fully divine. The life, instead of a few short years, we fully know is for eternity. The real goal is the ability to concentrate the thoughts on the mind to the point where we know that we are divine mind, and at the same time know that we are human beings. Every human being has the right to ask the reason why and to have it answered by themselves. In this there is all love, all wisdom, all power, as well as all abundance. This means applying yourself to perfect divine being, which you are. As you concentrate on these facts, discard all of the rubbish you have been compelling your thoughts and words to store in your subconscious or subjective mind. Thus we soon find that there is a divine purpose throughout the entire universe, and that you are as universal as that divine purpose. You also know that your body is as pure and sweet as your thoughts make it. When you take the stand that you know beyond any question of doubt, you also should believe nothing until you find it is true for yourself. Truth does not need a prop to assist it to stand. The facts of our awakened state require no dreams to prove them. The awakening may be instantaneous, or it may take a long time of constant practice. We are the deciding factor. There is no time but the present. In the event that we decide that time is necessary, we find the awakening is the present. You may ask, what is the use of such knowledge? In the first place, knowledge itself is the highest reward of knowledge. And in the second place, there is also utility in it. It will take all of your misery. When by analyzing our own mind we come face to face, as it were, with something that is never destroyed, something which is, by its own nature, eternally pure and perfect, we will no more be miserable, no more unhappy. All misery comes from fear, from unsatisfied desire. There is but one method by which to attain this knowledge, that which is called concentration. The chemist in his laboratory concentrates all of the energies of his mind into one focus and throws them out upon the materials he is analyzing, and so finds out their secrets. The astronomer concentrates all of the energies of his mind into one focus and projects them through his telescope upon the skies, and the stars, the sun, and the moon give up their secrets to him. How has all of this knowledge in the world been gained but by concentration of the power of the mind? Nature is ready to give up her secrets, as we know how to knock, to give her the necessary blow, and the strength and the force of the blow come through concentration. There's no limit to the power of the human mind. The more concentrated it is, the more power is brought to bear on the one point, and that is the secret. Anything that is secret and mysterious in this system should be at once discarded. The best guide to life is strength. Discard everything that weakens you. Have nothing to do with it. All mystery-mongering weakens the human brain. Through it this science has been well nigh destroyed, but it is one of the grandest of sciences. From the time it was discovered, it was perfectly delineated and formulated and preached in India. And it is a striking fact that the more modern the commentator, the greater the mistakes that are made. The more ancient the writer on it, the more rational he is. Most of the modern writers talk of all sorts of mysteries. Thus it fell into the hands of persons that made it a secret, instead of letting the full blaze of daylight and reason fall upon it. And they did so that they might have the power to themselves. God, the vibratory force. God is that vibratory force or power that all are able to set in motion all about you, which shows you that you are able to set it in motion. And every and all things that you can use are for you. God never acts unless man and God act together as one. God is all things, and they are already in existence, but they are quiet, and man is unable to see them, although they are all in the storehouse. The only way to open the door of the storehouse is for man to know that all is God, to act as God, and call all things forth. Each and every unit of humanity is capable of accomplishing this as soon as they persist in knowing that they each one are God. Just go ahead with the complete determination that you can win yourself over as God, and see the windows of heaven open wide and pour out such a blessing that there is not room to receive it all. These windows are the doors of the God storehouse, and once you have opened them, they will never close again. Once they have opened, they will readily open for you. They have in reality never closed except through your own thought. Let go of the thought of the closed doors or windows, and you will find them completely open and already pouring out all abundance. Let go of everything and turn completely to God, Spirit, and God's Spirit will enter and fill the room, and your entire body as well. A great peace will enter your entire body and will never depart again. This is why you become God. Then every inspiration that comes is filled full. Just remember that Elijah held up the cup until it was full or filled full. There is but the one. It makes no difference how long you have thought separation. You have never accomplished separation. It is only your thoughts that have caused separation to you. Jesus said, "All ye that are heavy laden, come unto me, and I will give you rest." He intended that if you would give all of your thoughts of burdens to him, you would be completely released from every burden. He would throw them away, and you can only be burdened as you picked up the thoughts of burdens. This is a simple way of your release from burdens. Just let go of the thoughts of burdens, and you are completely relieved from them. The conquering Christ gives you perfect freedom. You soar with the birds in perfect freedom. Give the conquering Christ within you the opportunity to free you. This concludes my favorite quotes from Baird T. Spalding's Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East. Baird T. Spalding's descriptions of his Far East travels have played a very important role in introducing to the Western world the knowledge there are many masters who are assisting and guiding the destinies of mankind. His encounters with the masters present a dramatic unfoldment of spiritual teachings and episodes unparalleled in all of Western literature.